afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting for the City of Franklin. It is March the 19th. We'll call the committee meeting to order. I'll do a roll call vote on that. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Here.
Alderman Caesar, how do you vote?
Present.
And Alderman Brown, how do you vote?
Present.
And the chair is here also. The next item on the agenda is setting of the agenda. This is an opportunity for any member of the committee or interested party to change the agenda. If not, then I'll entertain a motion to set the agenda as written.
So moved.
Proper motion to a second?
Second.
Proper motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote on that also. Alderman Peterson, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Alderman Caesar, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Alderman Brown, how do you vote?
Yes.
So the agenda is set. Next item on the agenda is citizen comments and open to citizens. We don't normally have very many citizens who wish to speak at the committee. If there is some not related to an item on the agenda, you can come forward, make that presentation. I see none. Let's go then to new business. Budget presentations, Public Works. Remarkable that you lead that off since you're the first one on my list.
Thank
Go
you,
right
sir.
ahead.
Appreciate the opportunity to come before you this afternoon. We're going to be going through all of the Public Works Department's budgets for you all. Streets is first on the hot seat. We have Jerry Hatcher, the director, Kim Hammond, the fleet manager, and Derek McCord, the assistant director of the department. So with that, I'll let them take off if you're ready.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good to be with you. I'm Jerry Hatcher, Director of Streets. Joining me is Kim Hammond, our Fleet Manager, and Derek McCord. So today you'll hear us talk about, we've got 77 employees and broken into 4 divisions, so we'll go over each of those 4 divisions today. But first, let's talk about some of our major accomplishments in 2025. These are all I'm very proud of. Paving program continued to make very large strides. You know, last year, you can see some of the major thoroughfares that were paved. That section of Mallard was a short section, but it was in need of resurfacing. That was over by the high school, by Centennial, West McEwen, Seaboard, all those. I mean, really all those roads are listed, big improvements there. And so we continue to, I think, improve those. And I point out, Christine has helped us with those general obligation bonds to pay for this. And it's really helped us to move forward. Something to be proud of here in the city, I feel like. Another area is payment preservation. You know, this has been a big focus, especially the last 6 years. And we're highlighting there the amount of crack fill that we did in 2025, and this is now that the weather's looking better at this point of the week. We're going to do crack fill, something we do in the spring. So really, over the next month to 6 weeks, you're going to see, you may see that out there. Crack fill is very important to get out there on roads when they're not haven't deteriorated too far, but they've got some cracks in there, and we want to seal those up, keep the water out. That's going to prevent the freeze thaw and potholes, right? So it's going to increase that life cycle of the payment. So that's very important. That's the best bang for the buck you can do with payment preservation. It's crack fill, very important program, and I'm glad that's something that we continue to do annually. We do that in-house. We rent the equipment and do that in-house, by the way. Rejuvenator, something we've been doing since 2020, so we do that in year 3. So after we go in and pave some local streets, we will go in there and apply it. Some may ask, why do you do it at year 3? You know, you just put this down, it still looks pretty good. We're trying to get it again before it deteriorates too far. So when we put that rejuvenator on there, it's going to soften up that top layer a little bit, and that's going to keep it from, as it starts to oxidize, less likely to crack. So we want to reduce that cracking. So that rejuvenator is very, very effective at that. We're starting to see, now that we've got several years behind us, we're starting to evaluate it and seeing the benefit we're getting, and I'll be anxious to report to some of you guys in the near future about that effort. So we're proud of that particular program. Sidewalk program, that's a big area, and that does include sidewalk repairs and then retrofitting our curb ramps so that they meet ADA standards when we're resurfacing an area. So you can see how much we accomplished there. Traffic section has been busy this last year. The technology is changing all the time with traffic signals, and so we've upgraded a lot of our controllers here this last year. Winter operations, you guys, we came before you last couple of years with some needs as far as a new brine making facility, which is housed at Public Works, and brine making equipment that's now in place. And so that's been a big accomplishment for us. That facility, we built that in-house. And we did that under budget that you guys had provided for us. So I'm glad to give you that update as well. Organizational chart, we've got 77 employees. We're holding at that number for this next fiscal year. There's going to be just one change. That's showing our current org chart, and there's a position under Assistant Director. It's an Infrastructure and Development Manager position there. We've decided to make a change, and if you flip to the next slide, you can see a yellow there. Road Inspector, we're increasing that from 2 positions to 3. That's really where we think our biggest need is, and why is that? Because of all the development that's out there, the existing infrastructure that we have to look after, and guess what? All these telecommunications companies that are out there as well. It's hard to keep up with that. We get stretched thin sometimes. So that's our greatest need as we assess every year our staff. And so we had an opportunity not to add, but we looked with what we had, and we realized we could reclass and meet the needs that we have. So that's the only change in the org chart for fiscal year 27 that we're proposing. Okay, we'll start off here with the Street Maintenance Division. So start off with personnel. You can see here just slight increase, which will be typical throughout all the personnel for the different divisions. So just slight increase for salary increases, benefit increases, holding the same number of employees at 41. Operations side, very flat, very flat. Actually a decrease of 1.1% in street maintenance for fiscal year 27. We talked about this, so PR personnel is that reclassification that we talked about, and you can see that's actually a decrease to the budget is the impact. Regarding the operating costs, here I'll pause for just a little bit and linger on this because this is very important. You guys understand, and we've presented to you in the past about we're continuously looking at trying to improve our asset management practices. It's actually now a focus area for the whole city. So we're trying to look at that strategically. And so in the last few years, we presented to you PER for fleet management system. So we did that a few years back. We did a pipe culvert management system. So here's another area, a key area, pavement management software system that we would like to get funding for. Initial cost is projected to be about $80,000. Annual cost of about $15,000. If you look at the bullets here, the pavement network inventory, pavement condition history, so what's the condition of it? And we do an assessment every 3 years. Pavement treatment history, all of those things right now are housed in different databases, different areas. And so I've got to go look at a spreadsheet. I've got to go into ArcGIS. We have a vendor that helps us with the pavement condition information. I go to their website where they've got something set up for us to look at. That's not very efficient or effective, and it's hard to run a report off of that when you have data that's all over the place. So we'd like to consolidate that into one system where I could run typical reports that I need, but also some ad hoc reports. But what are we trying to do? We're trying to, and I've got that last bullet on there that you see, we're trying to ensure optimization of pavement treatments. It's got to be the right treatment at the right place at the right time. This is going to help us to ensure that we're doing that, and just something better to keep up with this history. Right now, because of the way that I told you we're tracking now, I don't have a real long history. I can't go back 8 or 10 years and tell you what I did. I can go to Mr. McCord over here and go, Mr. McCord, what did you do 10 years ago? And he can tell me pretty well. But I would like to have that in a database, and so.
You don't consider him the database?
Right now, yeah, he's, he can be in part a historian for us, which is helpful. But anyway, so I think you guys can understand the importance of this. This is our #1 priority, first PERs. The cost that you see there, we easily can get that back, I feel like, with the way that we're proposing to utilize it. We'll move on. All right, next here under street maintenance first PERs. We've got a track skid steer that we're seeking. The unit that you see there was a 27-year-old unit that wasn't reliable on that one. We had to go ahead and put on Gov Deals. What have we been doing in the interim? We've had to rent a skid steer, and we really are in need of a high-flow skid steer. What does that mean? It's a higher capacity skid steer. We have some attachments like a milling head. When we go out there and do that, the skid steers that we have now, we don't have it doesn't have that higher capacity type of unit. We have to go rent it. The last 2 years, we've incurred $32,000, just over $32,000 in rental fee for that, and so we don't want to do that. You're talking about a 5-year turnaround in rental fees versus the projected cost of this unit. So there's a pretty big need there. I want to distinguish it being a high-flow unit versus other needs that we have. The next one here is a tow-behind leaf vacuum machine. You know, we're well away from the fall, but as we all know, in the fall, that's that's the highest priority service that we're providing for our streets department at the time, seems like. So what we're finding is this last year, we had a peak right as you would expect around the end of November, around Thanksgiving. So we always have a post sort of event discussion. What can we do better? What went well? But we really want to add some capacity during that time of the year. So this really would serve as an additional unit to give me additional capacity. I do have the personnel, but my constraint is the equipment. So if I'm going to ensure that we're going to be picking up Thanksgiving week and during that time when we're at a peak, this acquisition of this unit would help me with that. Eventually, this would serve as a replacement unit. The one that you see here is 13 years old and nearing the end of its life cycle. But hope that helps you with the need on that particular one. Next slide. Our next PR here is a replacement landscape truck. What you see here is a 23-year-old vehicle. These have been hard to come by the last few years, but it seems to be that they're finally starting to manufacture enough of these where we feel like they're out there on the market. I believe the one we're looking at is a crew cab, which would help as far as getting an entire crew here in this one vehicle. But 23 years, that's a long time for a vehicle that's used pretty much daily. So that's the need there. Next slide. Okay, we'll move on to traffic. We'll start with personnel. You can see here just a slight increase at 4.72%, and we're holding the staffing level at 10. On the operations side, here we go again. Decrease 2.45%. So pretty flat again. Okay, now I'll turn it over to Kim to go over the fleet slides.
Hello. The first slide is over our personnel. Again, just like the other slides, just a slight increase due to salary and benefits, and we will be holding our staffing at 10 as well. The next slide is our operations. Unlike the other slides, there's a little bit of increase. That's due to a replacement of our mobile lifts in the shop. We currently have mobile lifts in the shop that are about 11 years old, and they need to be on a replacement program. So this increase is due to replacing a set, which is 2 lifts for the shop, and those we use every day. And our first program enhancement is mobile lifts. These are very valuable pieces of equipment that we have in the shop. Like I said previously, we use them almost every day. There's not any time you're going to come in the shop and not see a heavy-duty truck on here. They are especially valuable in supporting what we do for fire and sanitation. We would not be able to service those vehicles as efficiently if we did not have these mobile lifts. The technicians would have to be doing that on their back, and that's just not an efficient way to service, not including certain repairs that we have to have the lifts for. And we service sanitation on Fridays because they have the 4-day week. And if we have an additional set of lifts, that will allow us to get one extra sanitation truck in there versus it maybe having to wait outside until we have a few lifts available to get that into service. And our current lifts have been there 11 years, so this would be very helpful in our services. Next slide. This is our one of our older service trucks. We have 2 service trucks. This is the oldest one. It's 16 years old. It's a 2009. We need to replace that truck. It's pretty much aged out. mainly the capacity of the crane that you see on this truck. We've grown in the city that crane capacity just isn't something we need anymore. It's not as heavy as we need. There are a lot of jobs that we do in the field that we need a heavier duty crane. In addition, if we had a heavier duty crane, we could perform jobs in the shop with that crane. Putting arms on garbage trucks, that saves a lot of money when we have to replace an arm if we can do that in-house. And we don't have an overhead crane, so we use the crane on this truck to do some of those jobs that in our shop that we can't utilize because we do not have an overhead crane in our shop. This is our fleet replacement fund. You can see last year what the numbers were, and this year we're asking for a total of 35. Consumer vehicles, 18, proposed for police would be 14, and fire would be 3, for a total of $2,131,454. Consumer vehicles sold on GovDeals last fiscal year was 116,000. This is a very valuable program. We started this in fiscal year '23. And we've been able to really get a lot of our older vehicles off the road because of this. And by doing so, it also frees up time in the shop to work on some other things because we're not trying to keep these older vehicles on the road. Next slide. This is just some data about our fleet replacement program. This is what we have through FY25. And like I said previously, this started in fiscal year '23 is when it was fully funded. Since that time, we've replaced 54 consumer vehicles, 51 police, 11 fire. That's a total of 116 older vehicles that we've replaced. With our fleet management system, we do have a data point where it will give us the average age of the entire fleet. And this, we didn't have this data before, but this data is also a little, it's not just applied to consumer vehicles. This would be your fire trucks, your garbage trucks, heavy duty, medium duty, but we have a current age right now of 10 years, average age of our fleet. I'd like to get that lower, obviously, and just that makes everything run more efficiently. It helps the people in the field, they have less breakdowns, and everybody's happier and doing their jobs more efficiently. That is it.
Okay, got one slide here on the street aid program. There's several components to the street aid here. I've kind of presenting kind of the biggest components of it here. And if you study that, you'll see there's a big difference in the sidewalk program. That sidewalk program is comprised, again, of the ADA upgrades and then also sidewalk repairs. Sidewalk repairs is about a $150,000 budget item. But as we look at each look each year, the resurfacing program, there's some neighborhoods that have a whole lot more curb ramps than others. And so that number can go up and down quite a bit. So that's in part for an increase. As far as the overall street aid request too, another component is facility paving. There's some increase there as well. That's why that number is a little bit higher overall in street aid this year. I'm sorry, in 27 as opposed to 26.
Before you move off that item, just for the benefit of the full committee here, the funding for that street aid fund primarily comes from the city's share of that fund with some other additional dollars. We've put in a dedicated $1.50 of property tax gets transferred into that fund to do more. And then we have added some additional general fund subsidy as well so that we can do all that Jerry and Derek have described to you. And so this has been evolved over time in terms of the level of service we want to have here and what we can do. We think the preservation program helps us really stretch those dollars as well as we can, but we do put more in there so that we can maintain our streets at a higher level than just what the gas tax will provide us. So that is just a function that sometimes we get lost in just what we're doing out of it, but we have done quite a bit to bring more to the table year in and year out. And just want to make sure, especially because we have a couple new members of the committee, that you realize this isn't, the state isn't paying the full bill. We're adding quite a bit more to help it get done what needs to get done. And they will always take more money if we want to give it to them. We've learned that over the years, but we think we've hit a good balance and have a good overall consistent program to do work and get it done, maintain our streets, especially neighborhood streets.
Yeah, and our bond issuance we just did had a significant number in there for repaving.
That is outside of this fund, and that is our major arterial local streets. So, yeah, it's sort of a different, this is really where we do neighborhood streets, and as was described, sidewalks, you see the guardrails, you see that now we've added the city facilities component as well. So I think the mayor's broader point is we do a lot to maintain our streets, above and beyond just the baseline that the state provides us.
Well, do you exhaust all of the money in the year?
Yeah, the street aid is monitored very closely, and we do our best to get down to a nickel or dime or
Pretty
so.
much.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think you could hardly spend it anyplace else that wouldn't be recognized by the public as being a benefit to them when you go out and they miss a pothole and can drive on a smooth street someplace.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that, now you're getting on a 1.5 cent sales tax, a 1.5 cent property tax, you're getting basically 1.6 million, right?
Something
1
like that,
cent-
yeah.
1
Yeah,
cent
it's about-
generates-
It's a little over $1 million per penny. So,
A
yeah.
little over
Yeah.
a million per
Yep.
penny. So does that reflect that there, the new property tax rate? Because you're only 300,000.
Well, you have that new tax rate in place in this current fiscal year as well. So you are comparing apples to apples in terms of the updated valuation and what a penny generates.
Keep in mind that this chart as well is showing expenses. It's not showing the
Yeah,
revenues. It's showing
Okay, okay, the original question I'm satisfied with is if you're exhausting it and doing what we need to be doing with that or whatever it costs, I'm just asking basically if that is enough in there, or if you were given more, as the city administrator so graciously extended that offer to you, you would be able to spend more. I think that would be a very wise use of taxpayer, would be a wise use of my taxpayer money, I'll tell you that, because I like to drive smooth.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, and I'll just be brief with a response on that, and again, appreciate that. No, I feel like right now our funding levels are adequate to meet our needs, to make
Okay.
sure, now, I feel like we were behind in, years past, had to dig out of a hole just a little bit, but I think they are adequate. We're taking these other measures, like Eric talked about, to stretch those dollars out. We're trying to be wise with the dollars. We're trying to, again, do things at the right time so it doesn't cost us more. If you let the payment deteriorate too far, then I got to not just put a surface layer, I've got to put an underlying layer down there. We want to avoid that. So I think by being wise about this, we have a 2-year resurfacing list too, and that allows us some flexibility. As we're going on within a physical year, we look at that balance, and then we may move something around or realize we can do part of a neighborhood, go ahead and do some, or may have to hold back a little bit. So we make some adjustments to make sure that we're working within this. But to answer your question, the short answer is, yeah, I think the city's doing a great job at meeting the need right now in this particular area.
Any questions? Yes.
Before we throw the barrage of questions, this is a pertinent and simple question, hopefully, as a new member of this board. When we look at the annual budget for resurfacing and pavement preservation, we think of roads that are city-owned roads exclusively. We're not talking about Mac Hatcher, we're not talking about the interstates. Those happen outside of our streets department.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Matt?
The gap funding that went to engineering, remind me, where did that come out of, the sidewalk gap funding? We're shifting now to engineering? What pool did that come from?
No, this is ongoing maintenance
Right,
of
but
sidewalks.
where
We've got
did that gap-
yeah, we've got
moved
a
it
sidewalk
where?
gap. We've kept, gosh, go ahead, Michael. You seem like you jump in.
No, it was here. It was $250,000 of property tax that we had put in here. And we are simply moving that $250 contribution from street aid, keeping it in the general fund, but it's being assessed, again, it's being expensed to engineering.
So there's
Yeah.
maintenance and then there's adding these smaller sidewalk projects, and that's the differentiation here.
This is maintenance.
This is maintenance.
Engineering has expansion.
Yeah, the small sidewalk projects.
So there's another portion of street aid that is expansion that we're just not seeing.
That expansion is not street aid. That is your general fund dollars that go with
Okay.
that.
I was just
Yeah.
looking for the,
Yeah.
it was coming out of somewhere, because it
Right.
was going into somewhere.
Yes.
I was just looking for where it was coming out of.
Yeah.
And so,
And,
okay,
and just to kind of circle back on the big picture, these are really your neighborhood streets.
right.
So Mayor brought up the point of the other resurfacing we do. Those are larger local arterial streets that we're working on. So you layer that on, the bond-funded piece plus this, you have a substantial investment in maintaining our streets that we put in every year and as part of our capital funding as well. Just maintaining what we have as well as the broader CIP.
Any other, Dan?
Yeah, we've got just a few more slides too on,
Right ahead.
on the streets here. Okay, lastly here, Stormwater Division, personnel again, just a slight increase, holding the same staffing level. On the operations side here, actually see a decrease here, and there's an explanation. There was basically a kind of a one-off, a project charge that was included in fiscal year '26 of over $200,000, and that really makes up the bulk of that difference between '27 and '26. But essentially, it's the same level of service program that we're providing. First PRs here, now you may say this looks familiar because we did have a street sweeper as a PR in fiscal year '26. That was approved, and we're grateful for that. And we've got delivery of it, and we're using it right now. So I'm happy about that. It's just gone into service here recently. We had three that were, we've got three total in the streets department, and they are used daily, pretty much daily, through the majority of the year. Two of these were purchased, I think, the same calendar year, same model year, and then one is just a little bit different. So this one, just like the other one from last year, has reached the end of its life cycle. I think this is about 11 years old, a 2016 model. This one is, okay. And that's about the life with the use that we put on these daily. That's about 10, 11 years is about it, before you start to get into some heavy maintenance. And so that's why you see another request this year. On the third one, I'll tell you that we've made some investments and did a little bit heavier maintenance more proactively to try to stretch the life on the third one, just so we don't have so many that close together. But this is the second one that we're in need of replacement. And approving this would help us to ensure, reliable service and keep that same high level of service like we're doing now. Okay, Scott Gerhardt's going to come up and do a presentation on the stormwater fee increase.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be back talking to you about this today. We just wanted to revisit the conversation that we'd had with you all about the stormwater fee potential increases at work session a few weeks ago. So you'll see here on the screen the four options that were presented at work session with their varying outcomes. So just a little refresher. Option one shows you no changes to the fee as it is now. And back at work session, you saw the amount of general fund transfers that would be needed to supplement the fund moving forward if we were to leave the fee as it is. And then option two presented fee increases that would allow the fund to become self-sustaining and kind of net out to zero. And then option three kind of phased that approach in a little bit more, but general fund transfers were still needed, a little bit less than you saw in option one, but still some support would be necessary. And then option four would allow that the stormwater fund would accumulate a 15% fund balance to be used for any unexpected expenses or potential projects that we wanted to do in the fund moving forward. A small note too, that the rates you see on these on the screen here are shown per ERU. So small and large residential customers would be paying different specific rates than you see on the screen, but the numbers here give a good indication of the overall range in rates. So there were a few specific questions at work session that we wanted to address. The first being the outliers on this chart you see here of revenues versus expenses over the last 10 or so years. So you see those large outliers at 2015, 2020, 2025, and 2026, and we have explanations for each of those here. So 2015 and 2020 are both capital projects. 2015 more of a broad transfer to the Capital Projects Fund, and then 2020 was the capital project at 109 Battle Avenue regarding stormwater. And then capital projects have not been charged to the Stormwater Fund since 2020. So 2025 and 2026 are a little different. Those are going to be the acquisition of a vacuum truck in 2025, and then the street sweeper that Jerry was just mentioning in 2026. And then alongside that, there was another question about how we accounted for the necessary equipment we needed in the proposed rates. So moving forward with the proposed rates, you wouldn't see a deficit like that because those equipment replacements have been planned into the rates. So we annualized the cost of all the equipment used in the fund according to its lifespan, and thank you to Kim for helping us out with that. And then built that into the projected rates. That was about $450,000 to $500,000 a year. So the rates you see are inclusive of that. And then at work session, we heard interest from you all in implementing option 4 to accrue fund balance for unexpected expenses or projects. And we wanted to hear further discussion from you all with the added information we just discussed today, as well as the information that we're exploring a January 1, 2027 effective date for these rates. So we just wanted to hear feedback from you all on your thoughts, and if anybody else has any comments they'd like to add.
And that does conclude our presentation. We'd be glad to take any questions.
Any questions?
Very good, very good, well done.
I don't have any questions, Matt.
I don't have any questions, but I know you're looking for feedback. I mean, I still feel like option 4 is the right thing to do. I mean, we don't know what other things are going to keep coming as we're
Yep.
growing, and so I think having that fund balance in there, if we're going to do it, now's the time to do it, and incrementally more to give us some conservative cushion, I think is the right thing. So I'm in that space still. So thanks for the follow-up, but I remain in that place.
I have just 2 comments. I appreciate the decreased budgets in places there, Jerry. And one question about the system that will evaluate the life cycle or the lifespan of the asphalt that's out there. And I'm sure you've exhausted this, and it's probably a redundant question, and I hope I'm not insulting your professionalism by asking. It would seem that maybe one of the vendors that sells some of the products that we use to apply to our roads would have a very handy surface management solution that maybe we could use without having to spend $80,000 to buy our own. Now, there's probably limitations there, and I'm sure you've exhausted it, but I would just float that out there as if you haven't looked at it, maybe that would be something to consider. Certainly limitations, then they control your information. I understand those things, but I found that sometimes those can be very helpful in my work outside of the city. Would be an option I would offer up. And then the second, I'm a little bit of a different opinion than Alderman Brown here on the stormwater fee increase. I feel like this is a tax. We're offsetting a general fund balance with an increase in a fee that is staged based on the size of your business, or the size of your property, whether it's commercial, small residential, or large. And while I would love to say let's operate with a 15% budget because we don't know what's coming, I don't know that as a resident that the folks that I represent would say, sure, City of Franklin, take my money, you'll find something to do with it that makes sense. I would probably, given that statement, I would probably skew more toward option 3 because I think it builds up and we kind of sunset the fund transfer support as we bring this on. When I look at going from 383 to 594, that's quick math, 75% increase in a fee is a pretty healthy number for folks who live here to swallow. I'm sure there's also other options for us to get support for the stormwater budget, and maybe, I'm sure we've exhausted those, but I would just ask if that potentially is something that would come down. I know maybe this is dated information, but when we first started looking at doing leaf collection, I think it was tied to protecting, maybe, and I may be wrong here, tied to protecting and preserving our stormwater systems, so we could collect leaves rather than have them clog our drains and gutters and cause floods. I think it's a great benefit that we offer to our community. I don't know if that was federally funded or state funded
It's
initially.
ours to fund. So you're either paying it through general fund dollars or you're paying it through these rates.
Yeah, or you're paying it through
Yeah.
repair
Yeah.
when your leaves.
Right, yeah,
block it.
other issues that may
Yeah.
come from it long-term.
Yeah. And so I think just to be maybe more straightforward with I recognize that it will cost us more to deliver stormwater service in the future than it does today. I feel like going from 0 to 100 right now is a lot. And so for that reason, I think option 3 is probably the best in my mind. I don't think it's reasonable to do option 1 as much as I would love to keep it flat. The costs are going to go up, and I recognize that, and I'd like us to give our citizens an opportunity to kind of catch up.
So how long have we been doing the 383? We haven't had an adjustment yet.
2021.
Yeah, so
2021.
5 years or so.
5 years.
Well, fiscal year 21,
I believe so.
so this would be your seventh, you'd be heading your 6th year from a budgetary standpoint. Before that, it had not been touched since it was created, I think, in
You know, for,
'04.
Yep.
This is, what's the largest increase on there is $2 a month to a resident. That's what we're talking about. And it is, you're diverting general fund dollars to offset that, which means you're taking dollars away from public safety and other needs that you have. You're making a choice here. So that's why I would urge you to really look at either 2 or 4, where you get out of taking general fund resources away for a specific service that is a relatively low cost to our citizens at the end of the day. It's always a balancing act that we strike here, but that's where my head is in terms of what I would recommend is that those, I think, are the best options, because it makes the fund more aligned with what comes in and what goes out to deliver the service. Otherwise, you're diverting general fund obligations and giving an artificially low cost for the service we're delivering. So that's the mindset I've had in looking at it and thinking about the recommendation I made when we first presented this to you a few meetings ago. But I do definitely appreciate the input, and we'll continue to look at that and take that in.
And, Mayor?
I tend to lean toward the number 4, and I just remember a lot of times that there wasn't any money in the stormwater fund to do anything, and like Mr. Stuckey said, we're taking in general fund money and putting it in there, so I think it's going to be hard to maintain a 15% fund balance just because there is such a demand on stormwater needs. And I think my question would be after FY 31, is there a indexing factor that you can put in there to help us along the way?
So we did look into doing the indexing like you've seen with other rates in the city, but we opted against it because most of the expenses in the stormwater fund are personnel costs. So those don't necessarily index at the same rates that you would see typical things like construction costs or things like that, like in water sewer.
And we did look at this similar to water and sewer in that we don't index those ratepayer fees. We've done that with impact fees. But we have not, which tie to project costs and those kind of elements, and we have some more tailored inflationary indexes that we use. But in this case, we decided to treat it more like we treat our user fees. So that's
So in
where we
20,
are. We are trying to index where we can and where it makes sense, but thought here may want to do that at this stage.
in 2031, you can expect the next management fellow to be up, or the 2031 management fellow to be up in front of you with a cost of service study.
Alderman Peterson, any comments? Well, my comment is this: you're gonna pay for it one way or the other. I prefer to see it on the fee where you can see it publicly, see what it's going to, rather than it be set aside in some 0.25% sales tax or whatever it is. You can do that right there and look at it and see And you can be taken someplace if it were, your goal in life, you could see where that money is being spent. You can drive down Battle Avenue right now and see where $1,200,000 was spent several years ago to reclaim two houses in the area that had been flooding for the last 50 years, I guess. It's been flooding ever since I can remember, if it rained enough. And I know that we had the fire department over there one year draining that particular area with their ladder, hook, truck, whatever it was that they were doing. So I like option, like I said, if you can do option one and it works, it doesn't. I prefer option 4 rather than trying to subsidize it from the general fund. Any other questions or comments?
I just have one more if I could, and I'm clearly outnumbered in my opinion here. But this is an indirect tax, and we are proud of the fact that we have an incredibly low tax rate here in the city. However, I want to be careful that we don't have a really low tax rate, but the burden on our taxpayers creeps up over time. And you can do that through funds, you can do that through sanitation fee increases, you can do that through water and stormwater increases, and you can do that in other ways. And that's my role here, I think, is to kind of say, it would be great to have a 15, it'd be great to have a 50% fund balance, but I think prudence is the way that I would prefer us go. It is very good, and I'm glad that Alderman Barnhill shared this with me. The process of this being increased has not been something we've done annually. And that's good information for me to know. It makes me want to get closer to some sort of a very systematic, so that we don't have to go from, as Alderman Brown said, the 383 to 594. That feels like a lot. Even though it's $2 per person, it's still $2 per person. That's $24 per year. And you add that with $100 we took for the tax, for the sanitation increase, and all of a sudden, this low tax piece is nickeled and dimed to be a significant impact to the taxpayer. That being said, we deliver an exceptional value to the folks who live in our fine city. In that same vein, Jerry, you did a good job of reallocating resources that are there. And so that may be the message I'm trying to convey here, is how can we reallocate resources appropriately? I'm more curious than anything else with your head count. You did identify a third road inspector, but you didn't add head count. Did we reallocate an existing employee to that role? Great. Missed that statement. Yeah.
Yeah, so Derek had been in that position that we reclassed, and we felt like we could enhance his responsibilities and kind of make sure that was covered. But we always look at each year, it's not just about the quantity of positions, it's about, do we have the right positions to deliver what we need to deliver and the service that we need to provide? And I always try to look, can I reclass first? But for sure, we need to expansion with a road inspector, and I felt like it worked out very well. Now, could it be some point way down the road, may I need that position that we reclass? It's a possibility, but this is going to serve us for the next several years.
That's great. As long as the people are happy too, I'm good.
Any other questions or comments? Mark?
Thank you, Streets team, as they're heading back to the peanut gallery. The fine folks from Parks and Recreation are coming up, Lisa Clayton, the director, and Paige Cruz, the assistant director. So, thank you.
All right.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Glad that y'all got to see us. So we're all here. I do have Paige Cruz, our assistant director with the department, and Suzanne Carter is here. Brian Walker and Kevin Lindsay also round out our superintendents within the department and lead our great team. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge them as this part. I'm not going to go into, there's quite a few things I'd like to share as we continue through, but we tried to align our vision. We did a master plan back in 2015. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We did a master plan back in 2015, and where we created a very long vision statement. At the time, it was amazing. But y'all have really shortened yours, so we like to just be in line with the cities more. But as we look at it, it is about providing high-quality services to our city. So next slide, please. So I want to take a few minutes because it's important. In April of this year, I will be the director for starting my 25th year with the city. And thank you. One of the things that doesn't come along very much in government is seeing a lot of celebration in one whole year. And 2025 for our city, not just our department, 2025 was really unique. That some of the things that we've been working on with the city has just kind of come to fruition, and this was one of those. We broke ground in March in 2025 on the Pearl. We have the Elegies Inclusive Playground coming. That's going to be amazing, and part of this is Robertson Lake. So if you travel Carruthers, you're going to see the work that's underway, and so we're very proud of that and appreciate all that you all did and the encouragement and just allowing for something like this in our community to happen, and hopefully we'll be open those soon. Next slide, please. Then we went through the spring and we went to summer, and we opened Bicentennial Park, and so you've heard me brag about that for many times. And so we're very proud of that. It's going to be something, this Saturday is our first large event there. We're doing the Kids Arts Festival. Our team is very excited. We are expecting over those several hours, over 5,000 to walk through the door. And so this is going to be, we've already seen how our community is starting to use it. We're taking notes, taking pictures, but this is such a great space for our downtown area. And so anyway, just thank you for that grand opening. Next slide, please. And of course, we want to do another grand opening, which was the main barn. So we went to August. And so we are beginning. We've had quite a few events in the barn. We are looking for weddings. We haven't really advertised, and it is something that's really taken off. And so we're excited what's going to be. We are hosting a conference in November of this year with the state of Tennessee Parks and Recreation Association. So we're expecting about 450 of our colleagues to walk through the door, and we're going to spend a whole day at Harlansdale because it's very unique that we would have projects, as many as we do on this site, that they're able to physically see the work that the City of Franklin and all of our colleagues have done. Next slide, please. Then we had, sometimes here comes a public-private partnership. So we had in September of 2025, the expansion of Carter Hill Park. This is some of the things that as we begin to discuss in the budget and some of the increases, is some of these projects in which we've opened, it's kind of like having a new home. You've got to now begin to take care of it. You've got to maintain it. And those are the things in which you're not expecting, but those are the little bit of a creep in your budget begins to take place. We are currently, in fact, I went before the Civil War Commission this morning to share the kind of that concept master plan for the new section of Carter Hill. And we had some great feedback, and we'll begin to go through the residents and other commissions to receive feedback before I make it back to you all as far as the full Board of Mayor and Aldermen. But there is quite a bit of work to be done on this property to make it a full park, not just for the Civil War in our tourism from a recreation economic standpoint, but also for residents. What I heard this morning, and it just really rings well in this time, is make sure that this park is, because it's next to residents or the Reddick Center and seniors and different ones, to make sure that we provide that space for them. And that was encouraging to know that we need to create space for them to enter this park and then to elaborate there for it's not just interpretive signage, but how did it come about? What does Reddick mean in this area of this community and that type thing? Next slide, please. And of course, we had to submit for awards, and so by October, we had won Best in State for Bicentennial Park, and so you can see our colleagues in their picture, and very happy to receive that in Kingsport, Tennessee. Next slide. This is an expansion to properties that make an impact on the budget, believe it or not. Creekside Homestead and Roper's Knob expansion. I'll get into a little bit more about both of these, but with Creekside, you're going to see some grant opportunities to walk through the door, but there are also some challenges that we need to discuss as far as budget and what should be done in 2026 of the next fiscal year, and along with 14 acres, which is at 171 Hill Haven property, which is adjacent to Roper's Knob. Both of these properties will be deeded to the city by June of 2026 from Franklin's charge. And from there, it's about a city putting a plan together of how we create these, interface this with the park system, connect these to other areas, and of course, you can kind of see that diagram, especially with Creekside, with that master plan that's been approved. How do you connect it to other areas? Next slide, please.
I want to
Yes,
ask a
ma'am.
question. At some time, it seems like in the last year, I've seen, I don't know how many different numbers for how much property there is with Creekside.
There are different parcels with Creekside. We actually, the original was the 44.73 acres without the home. And then the home now brought in a little over 3 acres. That's what's included in that acreage. What some of the discussion, Alderman Peterson, is how do you connect it back to Harlansdale, to Roper's Knob, through Spencer Creek? Some of that is what that acreage shows as far as what trail systems and that kind of thing, or even on budget. That is still being just proposed.
And there was a portion of that project, a proposed component, where we were going to acquire 14 acres across the street.
Yes.
And swap it for around
Yes.
33, 34 acres.
Yes.
And the First United Methodist Church decided not to move forward with that agreement. So that was in the mix too.
That
So
was-
there were multiple
you're
parcels
correct.
and different
Yeah.
pieces of that puzzle. We've managed to secure the most important pieces. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. This is just one of the things that sometimes I think you don't maybe realize the small things. It's not small to us. It's the impact on the community. And as technology changes, so is the opportunities for robotic painters, our mowers, to different things that we have. We are seeing such a change in the recreation, parks and recreation, on all of from the technology standpoint. And so we're able to do these things now with robotic painters. It's kind of like playing an Atari or Nintendo, or depending on what year you grew up. I'm just sharing my age. Atari was very good. But it also shows that the impact that when Franklin Cowboys walk onto a field, or we can do logos, or we do breast cancer, or we do it for baseball. These are the things that we're able to do, and so I'm very thankful, and we just wanted to bring that to your attention. There is a community impact on sometimes the equipment in which you purchase is what it actually does. Next slide, please. This is something that we've done in 2 phases. We come back to say thank you for this. This is the LED sports lighting. We've relamped the Liberty Park, and 2 phases at Jim Warren Park. So if you head over there today, you would see even some lighting on the ground. That's being changed out. But LED sports lighting, it just changes the whole game for being able to cut those lights on, being able to be within warranty, you don't have to wait for things to warm up. It's such, the brightness for players and safety is huge. So we will see, and this will play a part in one of our PERs as we continue to enhance our sports facilities in Franklin. Next slide, please. Now we begin to get into the overall budget. We have 54 employees. I call your attention we're going to talk shortly about the grounds workers to unfreeze. We had those frozen, what we call frozen in, during COVID, that we also went through a process of, from a service standpoint, mowing with a contracted service. We are now seeing the increase that you just saw we've got 17 additional acres that we are having to mow. And so we only have 3 people in that position. We'd like to begin to look at unfreezing a few of those that are in our overall staffing. Next slide, please. This just kind of gives an overall general of 8.8 million and what personnel and operations will be at a snapshot of proposed. Next. So not a lot of difference in personnel, but those are the 2 personnel changes that I'll be bringing forth that you'll see in a PER in just a second. The next slide is where it really comes back that, let me share with you some of the reasons why. With Creekside, Carter Hill, Bicentennial, the main barn, all of those things have expenses to it. So we're beginning to see to where we're going to have to maintain that property, where we're not mowing, landscaping, maintenance, facilities, all of those things play a part in if you're cleaning or whatever it might be. Some of the larger expenses that we're seeing, is you're going to see within the budget, is at Creekside, there's a grant opportunity. The TDEC has several grants, and this is the local Parks and Recreation Grant Fund. I had brought this before the Board of Aldermen a few weeks ago to talk about the master plan to have the opportunity to apply for. You apply for that grant. We're looking at around to do the public interfacing for Creekside. So this would just be the ingress, egress, a public restroom, some trails, allow people to enter that property. We were hoping the residents that were there would stay and give us an extra year. They have chosen in February, recently, to move out. So it is not inhabitable for us to offer that as another opportunity for someone else. So there needs to be now some work done as far as going into the home, probably CAD drawings, some engineering services. We have pulled the trigger on some pesticide from spraying and termite. You begin to have to do things that you were not expecting. But from that standpoint that's where some of these increases come from. The other will be is the increase in us implementing for Carter Hill. We will do a public-private partnership, an amendment, not amendment, but an agreement with Battle of Franklin Trust. They plan on mowing, but we're going to share cost in providing the services for Carter, the expansion for benches, the fencing, adding amenities to that site, that type of thing. Those are some of those things, Bicentennial and, of course, at Harlansdale. So quite a few things within there. We already have started mowing even out toward Robertson Lake, so we have taken over some of those operations. So a lot that is taking place, but there's a reason for that increase is being in there. Thank you, Michael. This is, again, I don't know that I need to reiterate. I have kind of just shared the reasons why for that. So we are asking what we'd like to do. We do have around 3 vacancies in the department currently. We are in the process of hiring, but we would like to, if approved, we wanted to bring it before you today. But prior to the mowing season, if we could go ahead and move forward with one of those positions for a couple of months within this fiscal year, and then we would bring the next person on. If not, it would be January 1, and then the next person by January 2027. The reason why January 2027, we believe Robertson Lake will be close to finished for what that new project would be. And there's quite a bit of mowing and bush hogging on that site. Yes, next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Paige as she goes through some of the PERs, and then we will tag team as they come up. Thank you.
This one you did see earlier, similar, but this is a replacement for a landscaping truck, or should I say, this is to replace the existing, as you see, with a crew cab. And part of that goes back to the existing one is a 08, so basically over a 17-year lifespan and 50,000 plus miles, but that is a lot in our world. So in saying that, some of its safety features it's lacking, some of its operational insufficiencies that will help, but we also need this to go along with that other request that Lisa just mentioned with the grounds worker. So they go hand in hand, but also replacing an older vehicle. And also to note that the existing 08 would be sold as well if this truck was approved to purchase. Next slide. And this next one is a replacement. I know you saw this earlier as well from another department, but this is a replacement to existing skid steer you see there on the left, and that is the proposed track skid steer on the right. The existing one we have is obviously very old. It is a 2004 model with a lot of hours and a lot of service hours as well. And this would be used by all divisions. Currently, we do rent these as well. We also borrow from other departments if they are not using them, so a little bit of all. But we have two right now, and this one would be sold. This one would replace it if approved. This is replacing a existing rotary mower. That's a 2014, over 1,900 hours, and has exceeded its life expectancy. A motor has been replaced, but we are now moving forward just with where we are with replacing a lot of our rotaries with reel mowers, just for a better, more precise cut, more of that golf course look and the expectations that are there with being in Franklin. So we don't receive usually any pushback from our user groups with this cut, but this is to replace that older one that is there and got a lot of hours on it. Next slide. This one is a new request for PER, and this would be primarily for our urban forestry, and it is a compact loader. We don't have anything like this. It maybe looks similar to you, as similar as a skid steer, but a little bit different because of the attachments. For urban forestry, this would have been really convenient and handy to have during the storms, but we did not have that. So we used what we had in place or we rented. But this one does come with multiple attachments that we would also need, including forks, a gravel, and a loader bucket. But again, would be used primarily by this group, could be used by others, but as you can see the picture, very useful for this division. And this next request here is also a replacement for a mini packer. That is an 07, has a lot of hours on it and a lot of service on it. And I know Kim could contest this a little more, but we are currently, it is hard to get parts for this. So when it can stay down a lot if we can't get the parts for it. So that is becoming more of a concern. Over $45,000 has been spent on it for repairs that we can find in our records because it is a 07. And basically, this unit gets used a lot when it gets used, and it does get used for tournaments and things like that, but it also gets more and more usage now with events. If you think of big events at Harlansdale or Bicentennial coming in after or even during, if it's requested, but it also gets used on Saturdays. You may go to a baseball field and see them using it. So it gets used from that aspect, but also if SES has one that's down, they use it as well. We work that out internally, so it gets used a lot. Next slide. This next PER is a new request for shade structures at Jim Warren Park. And it's fields 1 and 2. This one, if you go to Jim Warren, we don't currently have these. It would be nice, obviously for the shade, for regular season, for baseball, also for tournaments or any type of event we have, just to offer that for inclement weather. And again, just the look of it as well, of course, is appeasing. A lot of newer sports complexes have these. When we did the project at FSSD, we did put some very similar to this in, so this is what we'd like to come back and do at Jim Warren and start that phasing. This next one is a replacement, and this is for a 1995 Kubota tractor that we currently have that has been very, very useful for us and probably some other departments as well that have used it. It has been around for a long time. We are looking to replace it there with a newer tractor. This could be used not just athletics, but other divisions as well. Primarily, it gets used a lot during the summer months. Could get used more, but there's a lot of elements it's missing or doesn't have that function like we need it to function, like hydraulics and things like that. So it would be, right now, if we don't have this, we usually rent an additional tractor to help us get phrase mowing and things like that done in our summer months. So it would help cut those costs as well. And this next PER is a new request. This is something we don't have that you will see changing a lot in the tree industry. And I say that's just where we are today in '26. We see these used more and more, even with contracted work, but this would have been super handy to have during the storm we had this winter too. This is a 50-footer. We are not requesting a trailer with this. We feel we've got a trailer that would work to transport it currently. But we do feel this would be very handy to have in downtown areas or tight areas and parks. Really, just our bucket truck won't fit in those areas, so at times we have to rent this as well. So this would be just primarily, but it could be used to also for other divisions, for maintenance, athletics, to put up netting, to do lighting, and some other projects too. So not primarily for urban forestry.
So the next one is the Sports Economic Assessment Plan. One of the things that we are finding out is over the last, Jim Warren Park is, we did the last renovation in 1997, Fieldstone's at 1998, Liberty's at 2003, we opened it. They all still look good, and we find that certain areas look great, but what is it that we're missing? And so the county has accomplished a plan or underway. Williamson County Visitors Bureau has done their kind of assessment. And so what I'd like to do is we take a look at what can we do with existing? How can we benefit from looking at as a county, especially it's county-wide as far as when you bring large tournaments or that type thing in? Because sometimes they will share in those responsibilities if we have a very large baseball tournament or using multiple areas. But it also it allows for us to understand, it's not just about new, but how do we repurpose things? And what makes sense in our community that sets us up for the next few years, that allows for us to see what that next master plan and that CIP would look like. So this would just play a part in, we believe, overall, as far as if we're going to buy more property, if we're going to do sports, then we're going to have to kind of concentrate on that a little bit to understand how do we capitalize on it. One of the areas that I have shared within the PER in the details is one of the things we're able to do with Parkland impact fees is to allow for, we provide offsets for design if someone walks through the door and then designs pickleball courts or trails or any type thing. My suggestion is to maybe take a look at some of those fundings from all of the quadrants to bring it together. So that, because this would impact every quadrant we're in, and what that would look like from a tourism standpoint.
And this next one is a new request as well. This is for cemetery management software. We currently don't have anything like this, obviously, so this would bring us to the next level. We have done our research and looked at different softwares. We've also done our research with internal and external. We've went through our IT department, of course, with this, and we've vetted this also through planning. And we want to basically use this software to take us to the next level and to be able to document things that we can't document now or that are inaccurate. And when we outsource work, and we're getting ready to outsource some more work this year, we outsourced some last year, we'll be able to document that and you'll see that progress, but also just to document our history that's there. And then it'll be very similar to our Arbor Pro software that we purchased, cloud-based, and this will come in handy with grants as well. So that's basically what we want to have something in place. I mean, we maintain our cemeteries and do a really good job, I think, right now, but we don't have anything as far as this other piece of it to be able to do this type work. So this would allow us to do that.
The next one is our final one, and I brought this before you with a member of Franklin Baseball Club as a partnership, whether it's done in phases or able to accomplish. But this is about sharing in the responsibility of looking at some artificial turf at Jim Warren Park, taking a phase 2, looking at 2 turf fields, the infields only, and as well as doing 2 full fields. They have a Challenger League. This wouldn't be the only thing that they use it for, but it sure would help even with from practices, and when you're in a tournament, you can continue to go. We normally do not, I'm not saying under certain circumstances, but normally we do not cancel games because you've got a rain out in the outfield. You cancel for the infield. And so this would set us, as you see, the county has already started, the schools have started it all around us. We're not proponents to do every one of them, but we really would like to start something. So anyway, that's where that ends up being. And then one of the things that was requested last year during this committee meeting was to look at the cost of the recovery and recouping those expenses. And so we're going to begin to look at this under the city administrator. He's kind of shared with us, and our ACA is looking at how do we enhance what we place in the budget of items in which we kind of benchmark ourselves. And this is one of those, as we begin to add new areas, then what is it that we're having to, what is that cost? What are the repairs? Are we recouping those costs? And bring that a little bit more, be transparent with it. So this kind of gives you an idea. Not every year is the same, as you can see, and not everything is expensive. But if it is something in which we are requesting that, then we should be able to document and show it and track it year by year. And this would happen on special events, it would happen on tournaments, it would happen to anyone we might rent a facility to. And this would be the revenue projections. You can kind of see of what are projections that we are incurring. Eastern Flank Rentals, of course, we're having amazing meetings like this here and not able to rent it. So thank you for that. But we're glad you're here, but we still, it would be wonderful if we had a.
We're not paying customers.
You're not paying customers. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. You're not paying customers. However, I know. Depends on how long those meetings go. But anyway, again, I think being transparent of where we're going and beginning to market it ourselves. We've got some amazing facilities, and where else can we do it? But at the same time, there is a quality of life. We talk about that for our residents, but it's a quality of life for our staff. That every hour is not about renting everything. And so where do you have respites on certain areas, and how do we make sure that we capture these for you? And that's it.
Sure.
Matt?
A few things. First of all, I was actually surprised by that Eastern Flank rental number. I don't know, I just was kind of amazed that it was that high. I mean, I know it gets used a lot, but that was pretty surprising to me when I looked at that number. But
Yes.
that was just an aside. First of all, the economic assessment plan, that's going to pay for itself in spades. So that is a no-brainer. And I think not only what we have now, but I think the potential for cross-country as we look at Creekside, I think the Pearl, I think what we're doing with the baseball club, I think the potential for a lacrosse partnership and looking at turf fields, doing more turf than maybe what we're planning now at the Pearl. Some great conversations with Travis Anderson. I mean, there's like 500 kids in the club program now. I mean, lacrosse has really exploded here. And I think there's just huge potential there. So I'm really curious to see what kind of comes out of that study and what the potential is. And I'd love to kind of get ahead of that, because I would hate for us to open up something and be leaving money on the table because we just didn't do just one thing more that we could have done, or one field more. So I love that you're doing that. I think that's going to be great. I've seen Chuck Isaac's clipboard and paper of tracking the city graves. I think $8,000 for software to not be relying on Chuck Isaac's clipboard, I think would be fantastic, by the way. So I think that's money well spent.
Just to mention him, we had a meeting with a group just this week. We are really, there is such an excitement around capturing, that is such a history, especially for those that are local. But there's a story every time you have a grave, from the children that are there, to judges, to Supreme Court justices, to, there's so many things to make sure that we don't lose. But if we don't capture it now and we don't document it, then potentially you could at some point in time. So he is exciting. He's our cheerleader over in that area. And so we're very thankful for him and the many that help us.
He's got some cool ideas.
He does
shared
have-
with me too, so I'm looking forward to that
Absolutely.
too. Yeah.
I guess my question is, sometimes, we have Fieldstone Farms. What goes on there?
You want to talk about?
Right now, county, we're not in a lease, but we actually do rent to them, similar to what we used to do, just not in a long-term lease. So for league play, for fall and spring, it's not the numbers that it used to be. One of the other things we do there is we also rent it to schools for field days, and we rent it for different, softball, adult softball is not as big as it used to be, but it is also there for mostly softball or kickball right now. But that would probably be part of this assessment too, and looking at that bigger picture.
Yeah,
We got older.
Sir?
We got older. Couldn't run as fast.
You got other options?
Not even commenting.
And we've had some fast pitch there too, so we've had a variety, but probably more adult softball and some kickball tournament stuff,
Because that
and
used
some
to be,
rentals.
that used to be
What
used to be.
every night.
When I got here, you had church leagues on Sunday, you had co-ed, you had men's, women's, everything. It was 7 days a week.
Yep.
And it has dwindled. And it's just that's just the times that you're going to see a trend. And that's one of the things we want to be able to do is, then how can you utilize that park? What
Yes.
else could you do? Not to do away with, but enhance. And it'd be interesting to understand, especially even the structures that are there. You've got a concession stand, you've got restrooms, and of course,
Pavilions.
people walk, pavilions. How do you revamp those areas in order to make sure that we maximize that space for the community, especially on that part of town?
Right.
So it's real important, especially as Brownland Farms changes over. So think about those things.
Yes.
I'll try to be very brief. There we go. Kind of the stroke of death there. And it's still upcapped. It's just not as utilized by the public. And as somebody who, in my glory days, ran after, I jogged because most of my balls were home runs. But I played on those fields, and let the record reflect.
Short field.
Yeah.
Okay.
Video cameras.
Yeah, I don't think there's any VHS of that. Yeah, everybody, they just sat down. They knew it was going over. Then they put in the 2 home runs as an out rule, and that kind of ruined my game. But thank you for that update. This is more of a technical question than anything else. I remember a few years back, we brought in the robotic mowers, and that was an exciting thing, particularly on this large piece of property. Are we still using those? Do they end up not panning out? How did that work out?
We are. Well, now that we've started back mowing, we've used them at Harlansdale or LSI, who we contract with, and we've used them here. So more where there's wide open spaces, not so much at Jim Warren, just because it's tighter and you got your fingers and more trees and more sidewalks. So it has to be more wide open spots. But yes, we're still utilizing them, and I think the technology keeps improving. So it's pretty awesome to
It's getting
watch.
better and better.
Yeah.
And I guess that was going into my question about adding the new folks to try and maintain after the COVID. They're not doing edging, and they're not doing tight spaces, and they're not doing work that you have to.
No,
do.
it's more wide open space, and it truly is, and I know we kind of kid about that, but it's a person that's sitting here.
Yeah, I've seen
kind
them
of-
out there with the cherry
Yeah,
jacket on.
and so the areas in which you're talking about with this group is anything that we currently do not have within that contract. And so therefore, here comes that we mowing Creekside and you're mowing Bicentennial that we used to not mow, but now you do have to maintain it at a higher level in certain areas. So again, we've increased by 17 acres, and in which if you're not able to accomplish that in the time period, you're always behind. And you also have to remember, even if a 3-person crew, and you think, well, that's not a lot, but at the same time, if someone's always at a training, vacation, sick, that you're down to 2 people. So we're always a little bit behind with that. And so that's the reason we'd like to just go back, revisit those unfunded positions, and slowly begin to increase that back into the existing budget.
I appreciate that. I would just say maybe 2 final things. One, we have an enormous number of parks in our city, and we've grown even in the almost 20 years I've been here. And I think a lot of our residents probably take for granted what's here and don't think that there's a lot of communities maybe really close to here that don't have the parks infrastructure that we have, and they aren't maintaining those parks. And then the second thing is, like you said, when you buy a new house, the great part is that you have a new house. The downside is you have to mow the yard, you have to paint the shutters and all those things. And one thing that I think would get public outcry louder than anything else is for us to stop maintaining our park system at the level that the community has grown to appreciate. I would fully support you adding a person ahead of, and obviously Eric will make this decision, but let's not let our maintenance of these park systems fall up on the wayside. That would be the first complaint that I would get, and I've not had one yet because we've done such a stellar job, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not,
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Mark?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Parks team. Next up is Scott Willier, the Emergency Management Coordinator for our city.
This. Good enough. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. If you do not know me, my name is Scott Willier. I am your Emergency Management Coordinator. I come before you first to give you 3 guarantees. I will be relatively brilliant, but I will be exceptionally brief, and then I'm going to be quickly gone. All right? If I could, I'd like to give you just a quick overview of my team. It is myself, and I have an emergency management specialist. His name is Gino Fantoni. He could not be here this evening. The emergency management team leads the city's emergency preparedness and is responsible for managing and coordinating the city's resources and responsibilities in planning for all aspects of emergencies. Emergency management promotes public awareness and manages and oversees the development, maintenance, and testing of a comprehensive all-hazard emergency management program for the city and community. Our team develops the strategic direction necessary for the city to be prepared, equipped, trained, and ready to respond to the consequences of disasters, as well as mitigate the effects and recover from the impacts. We conduct and plan these operations through prevention, mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. Then we can draw your attention to the slides. 2 of the biggest accomplishments we're proud of is we received and utilized our new fully outfitted 42-foot incident command trailer. And from last year's PER, we received and deployed 42 new Archer barriers, which greatly enhanced all of our downtown events. Next slide. Our organizational chart, quick and simple, we report to Mark Hilty. Thank you so
That's my simple.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I only have a certain amount to get. I got a minute left. We got to get through this. Yeah. It's just a straight line. I love him. He's great. We have a 2.6% increase in our personnel base budget request. Next slide. But the good news is we have a 24.1 decrease in our operations. Mainly what that's from is our city, if you do not know, maintains 16 tornado sirens. In the previous years, it was the best guess on what it would cost to maintain those throughout the years, battery replacements, sound tests, things of that nature. But now that we have some historical knowledge, we can dial that in a little better, and that's that 25,000 decrease. That's the majority of it. Next slide. Okay, we only have one PER this year, and it's for a side-by-side gator. And if you would indulge me just for about 15 seconds, we'll wrap this up. This is only $24,000, and it's only one item, but I really would like to get the point across on how crucial and important this item is. Approval of this request would give our incident commanders the freedom to operate and maneuver throughout the area of operations, whether that's an emergency or planned event. This freedom allows our incident commanders to verify security plans, conduct face-to-face intelligent briefings to their subordinate leadership throughout the event, interact with staff, support elements, along with patrons, collect and verify situational reports, reassess and redeploy plans and personnel, reallocate and redistribute resources. It is vitally crucial and mission critical that our incident commander, along with their staff, are fully equipped and resourced to maintain operational awareness and command and control without being hindered by delay, mobility, or lack of equipment. Next slide. I think that'll do it. Any questions? No. Yeah, hey, wrong vernacular, but I'll take it. I understand what you're going with it. I like it, sir.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
It's been entertaining.
Very mediocre job, Scott, thank you. So next up, we have Nate Ridley, Director of Sanitation and Environmental Services, and Wayne Sullivan, who is the Assistant Director. So, welcome.
All right, good afternoon. I almost want to let Scott present for us. That was very efficient. As always, it's a pleasure to be able to represent the men and women of the SCS department. And I'm going to go down to, I want to read just this part of this slide. We strive to provide and maintain a high level of service through efficient use of resources as we focus on the safety of our team. And currently, we have over 27,000 service points for MSW. When we say MSW, that's garbage. And then we have over 60 where we're currently holding at 60% recycling participation. Next slide, please. Some of our achievements, and this is the fun part of it. We have collected over 2.2 million service points within the city within the last year for trash and recycling. We've responded to over 5,700 service requests. We have transferred over 74,000 tons of MSW to the landfill, and we've also transferred over 2,800 tons of residential recycling to our former client and vendor, Marshall County. Totals for our waste process is over 1,400 for yard waste, and then we've delivered over 400 for 2025 MSW, that's garbage, and then over 500 containers for recycling on our recycling bins. We've implemented the new glass recycling program at our site and then also cardboard, and now we've also branched out into the different wards. So each ward has a site to where they can go take cardboard and glass. So that's a good thing. And we're actually keeping up with the count, so if the aldermen want to know what their wards are doing, just get in contact with me and we can kind of see whose ward is doing the best, okay? We successfully implemented we completed our initial state requirements for our second ACD, our air curtain burner, and that's pretty good. For a while there, it was a little bit hard because the EPA and TDEC did not want to play with each other, but we finally got that done, so we're going to be a little bit more efficient at our burn site. And then also, we've been reaching out into the community, and this is a very important part, because if we can get out into the community and teach people about what we do, how we do it, and how they can help us, that's going to be very important as we move forward. And also get into the schools. Miss Angela Jackson has been taking that on and getting into the schools and been able to teach the kids. So we're covering every aspect. Next slide, please. This is our current organizational chart. We currently have 49 employees that we have with us. We want to look at our proposed organizational chart. We are requesting on this, and this is going to be one of our first PRs that we're asking for, is actually at the bottom of our list. We're asking to add a tech support rep. With the growing routes that we have, within the last 2 years, we've added at least 2 MSW routes, and we've already added a recycling route. And then we currently take care of streets routes as far as street sweepers, the snow plows when they clear the streets, and then the leaf collection that they do annually. With this added person, that will expand our capacity as the city continues to grow. Next slide, please. With our personnel budget, you'll see an increase of 6.6% or $358,583. Next slide, please. Operations, there's a slight increase of 3.2% or $219,161. On this one, our capital, you'll see a decrease of 94.3% or $851,644. That is due to, we had vehicles ordered in FY 2025. We actually received them in 2026. So that was 2 side loaders that we got. And as you know, when you're ordering equipment now, you're looking at 18 to 24-month lead time to get them. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wayne Sullivan.
Thank you all for the opportunity. I'll go through the PERs, but like Nate said, he'll cover that last one on the personnel. So our first PER is to replace Unit 146 road tractor. The current unit is a 2012 Mack it's 13 years old and has accumulated over 116,000 road miles and 14,000 engine hours. So that's a combined 600,000 all-purpose miles. The fleet industry standard is about 30 to 35 miles per 1 engine hour on a piece of equipment. So you'll see the all-purpose miles, and I'll read through those. If we get this unit replaced, we'll sell that current one on Gov Deals. We have had a lot of transmission and issues with it and things like that, and they transport our recycling to Nashville or Marshall County and also transport wood chips. So our second PER is going to be to replace a 2011-1 walking floor trailer. That also hauls recycling, wood chips, and things like that to Nashville, Williamson County. That current unit is 15 years old, and it needs to be replaced due to some tailgate issues and a lot of service issues. So if that gets out to Nashville or Pinewood and it breaks down, then we have to have a fleet service tech come out all the way down there and fix it for us, if we can get it fixed. So our third PER is to replace Unit 148 knuckle boom. So that one has a total of 475,000 all-purpose miles. And if we're able to replace that one, it'll go into a backup role. We currently have 5, and as we all know with the storm debris volume, if we had 6 or 7 or 8, it would be greatly helpful. So our fourth item is a 2001 Freightliner CD truck. Has about 300,000 all-purpose miles. This one's 24 years old. So if we get this one replaced, what we would do is keep our Unit 167 in a backup capacity and then liquidate this asset. And it's way, way past its useful life. PER number 5 is to replace Unit 168 side loader. It's currently a 2020 auto car truck that's 5 years old. It was actually scheduled for replacement in FY25 to stay in line with our equipment replacement schedule. So that one would go to a backup capacity, and then we would probably liquidate. We've got 3 problematic trucks that are about time to find a new home, so we would probably liquidate one of those. Priority 6 is a Yale forklift. It's 25 years old. We got that actually used. We use it at our BOPA site to load recycling into vendor trucks and offload materials, and the fire department also uses that unit to unload cars off of wreckers for trainings and things of that nature. Can't find parts for this unit anymore. So the priority number 7, that's going to be to replace an 11-yard mini packer with a new mini automated side loader. It's capable of picking up MSW and recycling. It also is a non-CDL unit, so some people that come in with no CDL training can get into this unit and learn how to use the functions of this machine as they try to progress their careers and get into a driving role. So priority number 8 is to add a walking floor trailer. So as Nate mentioned, we have satellite locations now for recycling. We currently have 4 trailers in rotation. 1 is down. 1 usually remains down. So we're looking at the potential to get rebate for cardboard, but it has to be clean and separated from our commingled curbside recycling. So if we had a trailer to store that in, we could actually get a rebate that'll offset some tipping fees for our residential recycling. So that one we're looking to be an add. And then Nate will cover the tech support specialist PER.
And I briefly covered that in the slides before. It's due to expansion and growth of the city and that's why we need this position. Next slide, please. We're going to continue to provide exceptional service. That's one of the main things that we're about. We want the city of Franklin to be clean. It's nice to be able to walk around the city of Franklin and see that it's clean. We want to be able to make sure we're using the money that we do get in the proper manner. And as you can see, some of these vehicles that we've asked for have been here for a while, and that's a testament to, that means we're taking care of them. So we're going to be good stewards of our resources and then try to make sure we provide the best quality equipment for our team and our talent that we have coming in. Any questions?
Yeah, just go ahead.
First question, on the mini packer, are you splitting that cost with Parks? Or is that, because they had 159, I'm kind of doing rough math here, in their budget for a mini packer. You've got 352 in here.
So this one's actually a fully automated mini packer, so it's a side load, so it's got the arm. Theirs is a rear load, so it's less mechanical. So,
So there's two mini packers we're getting.
yeah, one would be for parks and one for sanitation.
Okay, gotcha.
And actually how that would work, if we got the new mini packer, the current mini packer that we have now, which is probably about 3 to 4 years old, it would go to Parks. And that would give them a more reliable unit. Actually, the unit they have now came from us. And then, like they said, if we have something that breaks down, they actually let us use it also.
Second question, general question. Do we apply for emergency funds for that storm?
Yes.
Either federal, state,
Yeah,
local?
that's in
Okay.
process. Scott, if he's here, I don't know if he's here. We've done an initial application and we're collecting some other information about what we can get reimbursement for. So yes, we have identified costs following the guidance that we've been given. We've made one application, we'll make at least another, maybe more, I don't know. We continue to collect those. So, yeah, that is, you don't know exactly how much you'll get back.
Sure.
It takes a long time,
Yeah.
but we are doing our due diligence in terms of documenting across various departments costs that are eligible and submitting them.
Okay. Scott met with a TEMA representative earlier this week. He'll be scheduling a meeting with Public Works, Fire Department, and the representative and her team within the next 2 weeks, I'm guessing, and they'll step through all the process. But each event seems to be a little different, and so this is. so
My
we're
memory
going-
is the first application was in the $300,000 to $400,000 range of eligible costs that we'd identified. And again, we're still collecting some, keeping an eye on it. We're trying to make the most of it, but it's fairly narrowly defined.
Yeah.
For example, the services that sanitation is doing, we can't do the residential component, but we can do anything that's in the right-of-way or more public in nature. So we're trying to define those the best way we can and get the reimbursements that we can.
Good. Good.
Yes.
Along the same lines, was recently speaking with a few different neighborhood HOA presidents. I assume that HOA eligibility for those funds is not something that
I
is a
would not think
possibility.
so,
Because
because
it's
it would have,
private.
it would have to be
Private.
documented that it's public right-of-ways, public space. So, yeah.
Thank you. I can say in particular, the one HOA president is expecting over 6 figures of cleanup work just in one neighborhood.
I believe it.
That's
Seeing the
certainly-
volumes that we've seen, yeah.
It certainly was not part of their HOA budget this year
That's right.
to spend that kind of money, and so great to know if there are resources that become available,
Yeah.
please, I'm sure we'll do
Absolutely.
an excellent job of
Absolutely,
communicating that out.
yes.
The last volume count or tonnage count as of yesterday was 2,400 tons for this event. And annually, we typically do about 2,800 tons.
So that is 86% of your typical year in 7 weeks of collection.
Yeah.
So it's a remarkable amount. One thing I would just add, we will be coming to the board, I believe in April, with a cost of service update related to sanitation. So you all did a rate structure, but we want to revisit it, just make sure we're updated with where we are, and the current costs that we're incurring with especially landfill costs, et cetera. So we'll bring that to you as an update, and get any additional guidance. You set a number of years of rates, but it's time to take a look at that too. We want to keep it regular, so that we know we're staying on top of those costs. And the fund is in a significantly better place and is, for the first time in its existence, is truly a self-sufficient fund. So we're looking at giving you an update on that in the next couple meetings.
I guess I would say that, other than these crazy times that we've had kind of recently, I always would hear more people saying good things about getting their garbage picked up. You know, they
Well, the citizen survey speaks to that. The satisfaction and quality ratings that we get from our citizens are extremely high for a lot of our, many of our services, but especially for sanitation, environmental services, and compared to their peers that have similar, surveys done. So, good job by our team overall.
I would echo that, and obviously last week during the BOMA meeting, which I wasn't at, I saw that there was a discussion on the storm update. We obviously had a lot more waste to pick up than maybe we originally had thought. And I think that perhaps, at least in the folks that live near me, were afraid that we weren't gonna come and pick up again. So they started doing all their pruning immediately to get it out so that you would pick it up as part. And I would just say to those folks, we'll pick up clippings that are done by the homeowner year-round. You don't have to put it out right now.
And that's kind of what our guys are seeing. They'll go through in the initial cleanup and they come back and be like, it's like we never ran through there. And it's like, so that's kind of what we're running into, but they're doing pretty good. With, our new method, how we're attacking this, we're making good progress. And then we're also looking at alternatives as we move forward to make sure we move it along and get it completed in a timely manner.
Any other questions of Mayor or William? Mayor, you have none? Mark, you're up.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine.
Thank you, guys.
We'll welcome to the table Water Management Department. We have Michelle Hatcher, who's the director, and Dylan Gaster, who is the fiscal affairs manager.
Yes.
It's on here.
You're still doing a good job, Mark.
Watching it all. Thank you, sir.
All right, so I know save the best for last, right? I can say that after, because they've all left. Oh, no, thanks, Nate. All right, so the purpose of our department is to continually strive to provide excellent water and wastewater services, preserving the quality of our existing systems and treatment processes, and enhancing what we have through proactive operations and planning. The services provided by our department include drinking water, treatment and distribution, wastewater collection and treatment, and then reclaimed water distribution for customers located primarily in the city of Franklin, but as you all know, we extend that as needed. Let's see, so our budget goals, what you'll see during this presentation is to further our implementation of proactive operations and maintenance. As we look at that, I've heard some of the previous departments that go before us have talked about kind of taking care of the assets that we have. So, you all have, we've gone through, the process of implementing the largest capital project, right, in the city. So how do we maintain that appropriately for our ratepayers? Site improvements to the water treatment plant to continue to exceed our state standards. So we'll talk about that as one of our capital projects in a little bit. And then continuing our progress on funding strategies and design for the Southeast Clean Water Plant, and then other infrastructure rehabilitation projects that we have. So we're continuously improving with our rate-funded capital. So I'll jump in here. As you can see, this is our current organizational chart. And on the next slide, we have the proposed organizational chart. So this year, one of the goals with the budget and specifically the organizational chart was to not restructure in terms of budget moves, but just clean up the reporting structure and how that's visualized. You can also see with the colors, we have the 6 different divisions identified. And the only non-PER moves that really happened, you'll see down in the utility service workers. And this was just a goal to clean up the span of control to make sure each supervisor is overseeing a manageable number of employees with performance evaluations and other things that are needed. And then the additional positions we'll go over in our PERs, and you see those there in yellow. So getting into our personnel budgets, and this is all the divisions, both water and sewer, looking at them as a big group. So there is an increase of almost 700,000 or 5.5% from 26's budget. These increases are based on medical premiums, pension cost. We've had a large number of retirements, and the pension costs associated in that we forecasted in our personnel budgets this year, and then the wage and merit increases. And all these will be refined and revisited before the final budget recommendation comes forward in May. Next, in operations, an increase of 6%, or just over $1.6 million. We do have some changes that occurred in operations, and we've got a summary later in the PowerPoint that breaks down these changes a little bit better side by side so you can see the total impact. But a broad overview, similar to last year, in the general fund, taking the property insurances out of the departments because you have to factor in how much each property is worth, but they're all looped together in the general fund anyway. We did the similar approach with our water and sewer general funds, so they pay their proportional share, but that way the budget actuals are more accurate as we go through the year instead of being in the divisions and mix up in insurance or anything like that could throw off what our supervisors are actually spending. So this gives them a better idea, and that is a 5% increase as well, just based on the information we have right now with premiums and things like that. Next is a 3% increase in water purchased. So this is the water we purchased from Harpeth Valley Utility District, and we got a letter notifying us that the rates of their water are going up. And so we included that in our projections for how much water we usually purchase, and so increased that by the 3% as well. We have still priorities. They've always been priorities, but we're putting more financial focus on them in the realm of equipment maintenance and also equipment purchases. So I sat down with every division supervisor, and we talked through. They have a good idea of their kind of problem pumps or where the maintenance needs are. And we were able to identify in our 2 to 3 year forecast what is needed, but there is definitely that ongoing need for looking even further into the future so that our baseline equipment and maintenance budgets can sustain what's ongoing, but this year that had to increase. Repairs and maintenance, and so we wanted to be proactive and go ahead and take care of some of the problems that we know of at this time. And finally, from our IT department, the SCADA system, which Michelle can give you more information on. I'm the finance side. She does all the engineering and works like that. So we got are in the process of waiting to hear back on if we got a grant from the EPA. We applied for cybersecurity. In the process of developing that grant, it came to our attention that there's some hardware upgrades that can happen, and so we included that amount in our budget so we can begin tackling that and remain cyber secure. Lastly, and with the biggest change of these past 3 slides, we have a decrease of just over 13 million or 66% in capital. And so this is the change from 26 to 27, and that's because we had a lot of capital work related to ARPA, and then we also had all the work related to the Ewingville Hobos replacement project as went through in a budget amendment. So not having these expenses in fiscal year 27 shows a major decrease, and '27 is set to get back on track with our usual rate-funded capital. And included in our rate-funded capital for next year is water mains, pump stations, sewer mains, and reclaimed water projects, which Michelle can speak a little bit more to, the work in these areas.
Yeah, so some of these just general ones, we need to replace the water main, from Columbia up to Old Carter's Creek tank to kind of improve that tank turnover a little bit. We are doing, the design of, Murfreesboro Road, water main. And then one of the active projects we're doing right now is the design of a new water main that needs to be in place and operational before the south plant comes online, which is taking a water main from, or looping the water main from Matt Catcher down to Lewisburg Pike. It's going to be a brand-new main, it's not an upsize. So it would help with some of that flow in Sullivan Farms as well, looping the whole entire system, but then also in that pressure zone that the south plant falls into. So that one is in design right now. We anticipate there'll be some easements that are going to be needed, and then we'll start construction. So that may be a couple years till we start that, depending on the easements. A handful of years ago, we designed the rehab for the Riverview and Carter's Creek pump stations. So these are old pump stations that are, we call them can pump stations. So they're essentially a can in the ground, and they are not safe and they are not fun to get in or operate. So we were trying to standardize around a typical, it's a submersible pump station essentially. We designed these, we put these off because we were focusing money towards some of our ARPA projects to kind of beef up that ARPA monies so we could, get as much done as possible. So we're gonna revisit those this next year. We have some small sewer main, I say Boyd Mill is a small sewer main project. It's doing a small realignment of a sewer main that makes a hard, 180-degree turn. And then McEwen, obviously, is the large McEwen project that we all know. We also need to, in anticipation for the Columbia Avenue widening, that's gonna have a reclaim line coming down it. So we're gonna loop the system from I think it's like Polk Place down to loop that into the Columbia to help the reclaim pressure system. So that'll be just a design, that'll be a small amount. So those are the main ones that we are kind of focusing. The stuff that needs to be online before the plant, we're starting to kind of feed in and get that going as we've got rate-funded capital available.
And we ran out of room on the slide, but the improvements to the water treatment plant is, we're currently in this budget year doing design, and then next budget year, we're setting up for construction of a new acid building, and that's just keeping chemicals separate. If you have any notes on that, because you know more about
Yeah,
chemicals.
so the chemical building is original to the 1950s plant, right? And RISC has come by, we've had, several, obviously, risk visits from risk, and we have several chemicals that are held together that are incompatible, and it's just because we don't have enough space, right? We don't have enough space that has containment and drains in case something were to happen. So this is really kind of we've changed the chemicals that we've used since 1950, right? So this is really updating the space to fit our current needs. There's a small, I'll give a spoiler alert, there's a small amendment on CIC next week that we'll talk about giving an amendment to one of that project, so we're kind of beefing up the design a little bit that we thought about afterwards with some drain lines and containment. So that's really all that is. That's in design, and then I think the construction is planned for next year.
So here's our summary of changes just in the base budget. So this is, all these decreases were in '26, and you won't see them in '27. So first, in the revenue area, were the ARPA funds. So as we spend that money, we get reimbursed. And so once we're done with our resubmittals, we won't have that revenue stream. Also, as part of the HOBOS funding strategy, it was discussed the sale of land from the water management fund to the general fund, and kind of making it official that this is now land for the park. And so recognizing that revenue is happening in this fiscal year, but we won't see that revenue next year. Also related to the HOBOS expenses is the use of fund balance, which for budget purposes that is coming into our budget as a revenue, but we plan to have things in the works to better address these and start building back that amount that we have to pull from our reserves, but still making progress on the remaining HOBOS in the system. In capital expenses, staying on the HOBOS topic for a second, we have the amount that was there in this year's budget as amended to take care of the current HOBOS project, and so we don't plan on having that same expense and that amount next year. And finally, the ARPA expenses that will be reimbursed by the above ARPA funds. And so with the conclusion of ARPA projects, we won't have those expenses in the budget either. Next to the increases that are happening in 27 versus 26, the aforementioned hardware upgrades, then also the water purchased. And you see here the exact amounts of equipment and maintenance at both the water and wastewater plants. So this is just trying to make sure we're being good stewards of our ratepayers' funds. And so building in these amounts to the budgets, doing that proactive maintenance, so that way we're not coming back and doing reactive maintenance and doing budget amendments, just trying to be one step ahead of some of the items we know we can address now. In business expenses, we have the WIFIA loan processing fee. So WIFIA is a program through the EPA, and we're currently looking at that as part of the financing strategy for the new plant. And we just wanted to be prepared that depending on the speed at which that process can move, that we're prepared for those expenses. Also, the continuing work on HOBOS, due to the location, we know there may be future easements. So when the next section is identified, we have funds available and they're ready to use on the easements. And the 5% insurance increases also falls into that business expenses category.
Okay, so we're going to go through the enhancements, and of course, please stop and ask questions if you have any. So the first one is to unfund one of the engineers, but then add in a utility review plan or utility plan review technician. I jumbled those words. So it actually comes out to a net decrease of $21,000. So we had two engineers. One of them was kind of strictly to availabilities and plans review. And he resigned earlier this year. And as we kind of got to examining how that needed to look, we kind of realized that we don't necessarily need an engineer in that. We just need someone who can help review plans. The modeling software that we have now to look at availabilities and improvements down the line is really user-friendly and easy to manipulate. So it doesn't necessarily need to be an engineer. So this is the same job description that's in BNS, so kind of just a plans review technician. And so that's what that's kind of changing that position a little bit. We don't want to necessarily get rid of one of the engineers and completely change that position. We might add it in the future, I'm not sure. But I think this is going to really help our needs right now. We have one person reviewing plans, and it is a bit overwhelming, as you can imagine. So that's our first one. Our second one is roof replacements at our reclamation facility. So Brad and the facilities team identified 3 roofs that need to be replaced as part of just the continuous, maintenance of our facilities, of our structures. One of them is the roof over our influent pump station that's just specifically over the electrical equipment. So that electrical equipment controls the pumps, and it's our variable frequency drives, which ramps the pumps up and down according to the flow. So it helps kind of conserve electricity. We're not running at full speed and then off, right? So we do want to maintain those because those would be very bad. The other one is the admin building. So the admin building the first one was constructed in the 70s, and then there's another part that was recently constructed. This is where all the admin offices are, and that's just leaking and showing some signs of repair. The third one, this maintenance shed roof, This is a building that's not currently in use, and while I know this is in here, we need to reevaluate like our just overall plan for this facility if that's a building that we need to keep. And so I know that's in here, but in the back of my head, it's kind of work that we need to do this year to figure out if that's an expense we need to incur. The other two for sure, but, so our third one is a change to the operators out of the reclamation plant. So we had two operators retire last year. Those were both our lab technicians, right? So really that left us with one person now who we bumped over to doing our lab operations, which are 7 days a week operations. One person can't work 7 days a week. So he's coming in, and contributing to overtime amounts right now, but that's just not a sustainable plan of operations for us to have. So we would like to, right now that's an operator, right? And so we need to reclassify that job description into a lab analyst to kind of further define the duties that they're doing, but then also to add a second one in there. And then this hiring a part-time clean water operator. So bolstering our staff with just one person who would come in to work on Saturdays and Sundays. We have one, so in addition to Juan and Ivan, who are the superintendents of the plant, we have one operator that's working on first shift. And that works during the week because we've got enough people there to handle operations. But on the weekends, it's a little bit rough, right? If something were to happen to that one operator, it could potentially be bad. They're going in confined spaces in the pump station, those types of things. So we would like to bolster that with two people on the liquid side of those operations, so that all of those decrease, moving from one person and adding one results in a net decrease of the $13,000. The fourth one is our biosolids beneficial reuse facility, and I'm so glad Alderman Brown is here to talk about this. So we have been looking at, it's taken us a bit, right? We wanted to kind of optimize our biosolids operations, and now we're kind of ready to move into this next step of how do we kind of create maybe a small revenue stream for our department and get rid of these solids. So we are taking them to the landfill, and it is a painful cost of $65 per ton that we pay. We get rid of about 20 tons a day. So that is, our rate when I started 12 years ago, it was $28 a ton. So we are being taken advantage of because we are not taking as much solids to the landfill as we used to. But also, we're creating such this great class of solids that we need to be doing something better with it. So what we have found, we've been working with Todd, the compost manager, is that, there are lots of places, but they don't want a load every day. They want, a lot of yards one time a year when they're fertilizing and that sort of stuff. So we need a site to be able to store those. We have taken a handful, so Taylor is our new assistant director. He has worked with Todd to deliver a couple of loads of solids to the composting facility to start working in those operations. But as we do that, they need more land, right? Like we kind of got to augment those operations a little bit. So this is a building to be able to do that. We have this slated for coming out of 2028 because I assume you all want to move this direction. Before I do a lot of work, I would like to know you want to, so I don't waste all that time. So that's really where we are. Okay, let's see. So that is, all right, so our next one, our fifth one is adding an infrastructure assessment technician, and this is a small decrease because what we're doing is we're taking one of our existing groundskeepers and we're going to reclassify them. We've asked for a handful of years since we made this position for a second person. So this is a person who's responsible for doing different parts of kind of some of these different parts of our assessment technologies. Dennis is the employee who works in this. We have leak detection equipment, so he looks for leaks. He uses our SL-RAT, which is our acoustic technology to be able to quickly assess blockages in sewer mains. He does some valve exercising, but he can't do that alone. And so right now, because he's been the only person, he's had to pull additional staff from other places, which then hinders other operations. So this is taking one of the groundskeepers that we have. Since Brad now has an outside company coming in to mow our plants, we don't necessarily need another groundskeeper because that's his scope is limited now. So this would be reclassifying him to be able, that second person to be able to help our existing infrastructure assessment technician and being able to, assess our system, do those types of things quicker. Okay, so number 6 is a skid steer. We have 2 skid steers in our department right now. One of them is at the water plant, the other one is at our reclamation plant, right? This is for the service division. We don't have any for the service division to use. This one we're looking at purchasing an attachment to be able to bush hog easements quickly, right? It's a bit safer, so we were using a tractor for that, and, if you can imagine bush hogging an easement that we do once a year, right? Leaves and trees and everything hitting people in the head. This is safer because it's an enclosed cab. But also, we would use this for other service division activities. We're gonna get to, the next enhancement is another mini excavator, right? We have 3 mini excavators in our fleet right now. We have 6 crews. So we use all of our heavy equipment to help with our jobs to do them quicker. Oftentimes what we do is we will have a dump truck dump rock, right, in a street because that helps us backfill quicker. We need something other than shovels to help put that into a trench, right? It's just we're not, because the other 2 skid steers are at different facilities, we need something to be able to use to augment our crews, the work that we do. All right, the next one we have is a dump truck. We have 4 dump trucks. We have 6 working crews. So we don't have enough for every crew to be able to be doing work, like to be doing construction work, right? So, what we do a lot of service repair. We do a lot of installing clean outs, helping people unclog drains. We have, sometimes like Google Fiber or things that are boring through utilities, we got to be able to fix them. But if those other mini X's and dump trucks are being used in other places, then we've got to reallocate resources, and it just becomes hard. So we have the current dump trucks that we have, 2 of them right now are a 2006 and a 2011, right? So this would be replacing one of those, adding, with a brand new one. Our next one is the mini X. This is what I talked about, right? So we have 3 right now for 6 crews. Right, this is not enough to do the work that we do. This is Dylan took this picture at the Murfreesboro main break that we had during the ice storm. Right, we had 2 of them right there because that road, that pavement is it's 3 feet thick. We had a hard time cutting through that. We intend to gov deal one of the backhoes that we have, which would still leave us with 2 backhoes if we were to get this mini X. So we would offset some of that cost a little bit. Let's see, the next one we've got is a customer portal. So this one is also fiscal year '28, but this one's, we have been working for the past handful of years, ever since COVID, to replace all of the meters, all of the water meters we have in the system with an automatic meter, right? And this allows us to press a button in, Jessica's revenue or billing and licensing office and get everyone's flow at once. Oops, I hit that. Right, that's great. And we have all that data, but then it takes us, setting triggers, and then we have to call customers manually and tell them, you're using a lot more water, you should check on something. This would be a platform where customers can log in and they can set those constraints, and they can get that notification and take us out of the picture, right? That was the goal of kind of installing AMI, is to be more customer transparent with their water usage. This is for a small pilot program to see if it would work. To see if this is applicable. And then also for 2028, because it's going to take a bit to set that up and to get that going. All right, number 10 is upgrade of the old biosolids building for use as a maintenance center. So if you remember at the old reclamation plant, right, the solids building that was used, it was pretty corrosive out there, it's pretty rough looking, but the bones of it are great. And so what we would like to do, though, is because of all that corrosive, I'd like to turn it into, our maintenance manager would like to turn it into a machine shop, kind of an inventory room. We have really great plans for that, but I would just like to have some evaluations on the electrical done to ensure that there can be 240 volt running through there and it still be safe. I have some concerns about that. Some of the door frames are just corrosing, and I just want to make sure that before we do some of this heavy duty work that we want to bring in house and be able to do that, we have that capability. And In future years, there will likely be additional work that needs to be done, but this is kind of the one concern that I have right now. All right, number 11 is a CCTV truck. So our current CCTV truck, CCTV, I don't know why I said that wrong, is a 2016 model. So it's got some years on it, it's about 10 years. It's got several thousand hours of work, from the computer and stuff. We've had to replace the computer a handful of times. We've had this in the budget for a couple of years. We're kind of watching some, Emily is, about how, kind of we view all of the new infrastructure that's accepted into the city. That is a lot of infrastructure every day, in addition to the work that we, are supposed to be just doing to maintain the system, right? So this truck is used a lot. It also is the price has escalated quite a bit, and I would imagine it would take probably a year to get here also, so. The last one is an AMI supervisor, and this one is for 2028 as well. So as I was talking about kind of the customer portal and how we have all those meters, right? We have 3 meter readers that, probably need to be reclassified into being some sort of AMI meter tech, right? And we're not quite sure of how this program is going to look yet. It's still kind of in its infancy, but probably need someone to be able to manage all those and manage just the entire AMI system. To be able to work with Jessica's group to kind of get those going. There's some rereads, replacement of the batteries, if there's communication errors, those types of things. So I'd like to start looking at this if we do get approved for it, to develop that program to kind of be a little bit more solid, be a little bit more accurate with the way that we bill, all those types of things.
All right, and here's just the summary of all the requests with the total of what's requested in 27 down there at the bottom for you all. And on the next slide, we've got our debt service coverage, green is good. And so this is something I've had a great time learning from both Michael and Christine since any major project, any debt issuance, but also taking into account our operating revenues, operating expenses, and how those really work together to come out to this debt coverage ratio. And so right now, with everything we've got in the 27 budget, we are forecasting a 1.6, but every major decision that we're looking at that could change the amounts in one of these lines and have a negative or in future years more positive impact to our debt service coverage. We're keeping a close eye on that and trying to forecast as accurately as possible in the terms that these decisions would fall.
So in summary, so our budget provides for the equipment and staffing to support our operations and the initiatives that we are working on to kind of continually expand our proactive approach toward maintaining what we have and the infrastructure that we have. Our budget continues our renewal efforts and focuses on the areas in the city with aging infrastructure and operational issues. Also, Dylan mentioned the federal loans, the EPA grants, so taking advantage of those as we find them. Our budget features program enhancements to ensure the department has appropriate resources and serviceable equipment to perform our day-to-day functions. And thank you for your support and happy to entertain any questions.
Yes.
On the biosolids facility, have we looked at bulk bag equipment that would allow us to bag with mulch bag? So maybe a smaller facility, but also open up consumer residential buyers, not just bulk buyers? Have we looked at?
We've not looked at that. I think that's part of the plan too. So I don't, I think Todd has that dream, right? But that would be part of it, whether we have enough land. So right now we're looking at the Carter's Creek tank site that the water department owns. That area would be perfect for a building and to expand what they've got. But we can certainly do that. That would be.
I would imagine maybe there's a cost that's in that, maybe a smaller building.
Yeah, so.
I
I do know we intend to kind of piggyback off of the way that the composting operations does their revenue. So, buying the ticket and billing and licensing and then bringing it, and getting the compost on their own. So at first, piggybacking off of that for some of those large retailers, but that would be really neat.
Yeah.
We
Any
could
other questions or
sell it at
comments?
Lowe's.
I do have one, maybe. When we talked about the, I guess, homeless thing, that's the property that we're.
Same site. So that's
you-
for a future discussion.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you probably need to be Tuesday at the meeting.
But we're not talking about it Tuesday.
Well, when are we talking about that?
To be scheduled.
To be scheduled.
Yeah.
You need to be at the
Yeah.
to be.
To be-
It'll be Tuesday, which will be.
Not this
a
Tuesday. Not this Tuesday. A Tuesday.
Yeah,
A coming Tuesday.
yep.
I like Gil. Yep.
I mean,
Mayor?
I've got a biosolid question too, and part of the original thought was selling it to agriculture and so on. But my thought really goes to, if we're gonna have a facility where we store this, what is the water content that we're getting currently? And also, is it meeting our expectations as far as no odor?
Yes, so Todd is, you want to come up here, bud? Sure. So, Taylor was actually helpful with the, you want to sit here? No, squibbish. So Taylor was helpful with getting that first load dropped off at Todd's facility, and I'll let him explain how kind of Todd worked through that, and then what our intention is, but Todd and Taylor have worked through kind of getting a nutrient content. Yeah, not nutritional. Getting a nutrient, profile developed, so we have that, so of just our biosolids and then of both our biosolids with our compost, because the compost adds a little bit of extra nutrients to it. So, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so Todd and I did some preliminary testing on just the biosolids and then a blend of the biosolids and compost, trying different ratios of mixtures. What we found was that roughly a 50-50 blend of biosolids and compost yielded the most optimal nutrient profile and the best germination testing that we saw throughout this testing procedure. Going back to the solids content, we're seeing a total solids content of roughly 25% in the biosolids, which I think is expected given the design criteria of the facility. Mixing the biosolids with compost is going to yield a little better dry solids content. We don't know exactly what yet. We're doing some testing to find that, but it'll be slightly better than 25. Todd has not noticed any odor on his site yet. He's only had the material on site for a few weeks, but I've not heard of any complaints of odor.
And the other thing for us to look at when you think about facility, wherever it might be, is does that factor into the level we want to have it at in terms of how dry you want to get it, right? Sort of the market. What does the market want? Not just the mix with compost, but how else we might distribute it. And your ability to get it at that optimal level might be something to consider as we look at a facility. That has been always something we've had under consideration since we went down the path of producing the Class A exceptional quality.
And I'll just say, Mayor, first of all, Taylor's exceptional. I just want to brag on him every chance I get. But the smell issues, we've had at the plant have significantly decreased, in large part because of the team. And since we've opened the new plant, we've had trouble, exactly narrowing down exactly where those smells are, where those odors are coming from. But they haven't been from the solids at all. In fact, a pretty significant increase, or pretty significant improvement in that area. It's really been from, gaskets and valves and potential manhole covers elsewhere. I mean, it's been a variety of different things. Gases being released, the digesters, being full, a whole lot of things, but it hasn't been the solids. It's really been, that's been a great improvement. And we've had a lot fewer complaints. Team's done a great job of managing the situation. So,
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Hilty, is that,
I believe that's all from Public Works, unless you
Okay.
want me to just.
summarize?
Well, no, I appreciate everyone from the Public Works team to come up and present to you their proposed budgets. I will brag on them. They do a wonderful job in some harsh conditions sometimes. Yeah, it's a great group of professionals. I'm just excited to work with them all, so, thank you.
You know, I sit and think sometimes when we have water and sewer and enterprise fund, that the funding is quite a bit different from the ordinary streets department funding or public safety or whatever we've got. So I think that probably needs to be emphasized, that when we're looking at something. And I was looking at that 3% increase in, Harbor Valley was $157,000. So what, I didn't do the math, so what is the total purchase of water for a year from Harbor Valley then? Because I know we're supposed, do we still give them a estimate of what we're gonna purchase? Every year? Every year?
We do.
Project out multiple years. It's a
Okay.
five-year report. Updated every year.
And I don't have that exact line of the budget in front of me, but it is in the 4 to 5 million range of water that we budget to purchase, but we never want to run out of money for water. So there is a contingency built in for environmental conditions that are outside of our control.
If I may add, as we kind of march towards a clean water plant, we're looking to potentially augment raw water with the effluent, I'll say clean water from that plant. And that would greatly reduce the amount of water we would purchase from Harpeth Valley because we could treat more consistently throughout even drought conditions. So I just wanted to point that out. So that would be a huge win if we're able to get that. So just wanted to point that out.
One last question, not significant. What's Harpeth Valley's capacity? Do you know?
That's a good question. A lot. I don't know the specific
Well, I'm just
capacity,
saying
but
that
all of the other water districts purchase from them, so it's significant. Yeah.
Doesn't Harpeth Valley get it from the river, the Cumberland River?
Yes, yes.
All right, let's continue with item 3. Report from the State Comptroller's Office of Review of the City's FY 2025 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report.
We are going to go back in time a little bit. We spent a couple of hours talking about fiscal '27, and we are now going to step back into talking about the fiscal '25 audited financial report. This was the report that Crossland, our external auditors, came to this committee back in December and presented their report to you. And then following the finalization of the audit, we have a number of filings that we do of that audited financial report. 3 of the ones that I will mention to you that I think are significant, we do file that with the State Comptroller's Office for their detailed review. We also file it with the Government Finance Officers Association. They're our professional organization that gives the awards for financial reporting. They do a very thorough review. Both of those reviews are documented with letters and comments of to help make us better. And that's the same thing I shared with you back in December with Crossland. They are our auditors, but they're also to help us always to strive to do better. And that's what we always want to do. We do also a filing that is related to all of our bond disclosures. We are required to file in a repository related to our publicly offered debt. And we do that. In fact, as you know very well, we have just completed a bond issue. It closed last Thursday on March the 12th. And bond rating agencies, the two that we went to, did a very thorough review of our audit for that process. And we went through that before the ink was really dry on the filing. So those are three very thorough reviews. We have some other filings that we do, but we have received the review letter from the State Comptroller's Office, and there were three recommendations to be considered for preparation of the fiscal '26 audit. And when we sat down, sat down with Michael, who leads our budget team, sat down with Margaret, who leads our financial reporting team, and myself, and we went through these three recommendations very closely. And we wanted to share with you our thoughts about how we will implement these three comments into the fiscal '26 audit process. And so I've just numbered them as the letter from February 13th listed. We'll start with Michael, and then Margaret will talk about 2 and 3, our financial reporting recommendations.
So the observation, the first one was regarding the road impact fee budget, and that was overspent by almost $400,000. As you know, it is the legal responsibility to spend only what you appropriate. What we determined was that we had underestimated the amount of total expenditure. We know how much is going to be spent during the year for debt service. We know how much, we have an estimate for how much is going to be spent in road impact offset agreements. So we are taking steps to ensure this year that we limit when those offset agreements will be paid out, and we are going to make doubly sure that we have sufficient appropriation in the final budget amendment of the year. Now, the fund has plenty of money. It's not a question of not having the available resources, but legally we are not allowed to spend what you do not authorize us to spend.
So if Greg hadn't given his approval, you just up the river. Remember that now.
And I will share that road impact fee is one of probably the least predictable funds in the budget process because, as Michael was sharing, there's no people expenses. And so when you have general fund, for example, and you have personnel expenses, that is more, while you will have some vacancies here or there, it's more predictable. Road impact, once you get to this reimbursement, which is an expense, there does have to be an estimate when the budget's prepared, and then there has to be very close monitoring throughout the year because those expenses are incurred when the city engineer determines that should be paid. So there is not probably a science, but it does have to be monitored very closely, and that's what Michael was sharing, that they're going to be watching it very closely. But it is one that's difficult to say that you know exactly at the start of a fiscal year what those reimbursements will be because you really don't.
So we're gearing up right now to do the final budget amendment for the year, the cleanup, and that will be a key focus to make sure we've provided adequate appropriation to cover those. We will do everything we can to not have that happen again as it did in this case. And what's been said is true. It's hard because they happen in chunks, and they are driven by things we can't always predict. But we can put some additional safeguards in place to do our very best to prevent it from happening again. Sufficient funds were there. It wasn't a shortage of funds. It was just the appropriation action.
Yes.
Since I voted for this, I figured I'd ask a question. But just help me understand the process, because it's not, as you said, Eric, it's not a fact of us not having the money and funding it. Would the solution or resolution to this be to decline rebating the money until the fiscal year turned?
So we don't know when offset agreements are going to be initiated, right?
Yeah, and when the work
We enter
will be completed,
contracts,
yeah.
so we know.
Or when
exact
the
amount.
payment is triggered.
When the payment
by
is
the
triggered.
completion of an
Correct.
improvement.
When it will be finished
An
and when the
acceptance
ask
of
will
an
be there.
improvement.
Because
That
it
kind of
depends
thing.
upon the progress of the development.
Yeah.
We have made the estimate annually for $3 million a year in appropriation for those offset agreements. In some years, we spend $30,000. Some years, we spend $700,000. Last year, we spent $3.4 million. And so we do have the control, however, of making sure that we know what has been requested and what is available and when those checks are cut. It's also the question of being able to, at this point in time, go and see what we've spent year-to-date and how much we need to increase it. There's a contractual obligation we have to provide the resources back to the developer if the improvement has been made and accepted to our standards.
I can see where that would get very sticky for a developer for us to say, hold on, like, right, let's wait 60 days.
We'll get back to you in
Yeah,
July.
And and Alderman Caesar, we do operate under modified accrual, so we cannot hold, though, we
See that.
actually do have to pay expenses in the fiscal year in which, in this case, the city engineer certifies that they are done. So we are not cash basis, and we do have to provide modified accrual standards. So that's where this, just,
Well, I guess the other question for me is, were we surprised at the finding, or did we kind of know going in that this?
We had an idea going in. I will say that, you know, this was something that we made an estimate, and I own this. This was budget. We made an estimate for final expenses. The offsets were continued to be paid out, sort of that April, May timeframe as we were getting the amendment set. There was one final debt service payment which hit in June. Well, guess what?
Before July.
That had to, you know, you pay your debt.
Yeah.
It's always the balance of how much you're spending and how much you appropriate. Because again, like I said, the total amount of offset liability for the city is much greater than that $3 million annual expenditure, or annual appropriation, excuse me. But we try to balance it so that we don't lock up too much
Sure.
on an annual appropriation, because then your year-end financial statements, legally compliant, but you have a budget of 10 million and you only spend 4.
Yeah.
And that raises other questions.
Yeah, I suppose is there the final question around this, because you guys are certainly more astute at this subject. It will not get easier to budget, right? We're gonna continue to be surprised by these as projects complete sooner than maybe we thought, or maybe later than we thought. Is there a cleanup protocol that you could have done, or we could have done in June, to balance this so that it didn't get caught by an audit, and now we
the challenge is that we have to have 3 readings completed by June 30th in order to have a budget amendment considered effective. And it has to get started by the 1st of May to get through that process. Now, something that we talked about together as a team was, as Michael said, we have sufficient fund balance in this. Road Impact has sufficient fund
the
balance.
money's there, yeah.
We could always ask for an appropriation that may even seem higher than what the city engineer projects. We will satisfy the requirement for appropriation, but of course, finance will only pay out what the city engineer signs off on. So that would make, that's one way to look at
You
it.
could do a appropriation every year for the amount of outstanding contracts.
Right.
It would be way overshooting the mark.
And you're not pulling it out of the
And that
general
is not
fund.
normally our practice,
Right.
but this is a very limited fund. We pay some debt service and we pay on these agreements, essentially. So you could do that, and that would provide a safeguard at all times. You're way overshooting the mark in every year in terms of what you will need, but it eliminates the risk of timing and uncertainty that naturally comes with these expenditures.
And I will say that the other thing that we spend out of this fund is direct support for capital projects. So, we are taking steps to mitigate the risk within the fund because we are no longer servicing new general obligation bonds from this fund. We've shifted that so that all future expenditures are either the offset agreement repayments or direct support for capital projects. So by the time 2032 rolls around, the subsidy that goes to service that debt will be completed. And then we'll know only what the offset agreements And then we can plan, of course, what capital needs are.
I appreciate the additional context, yeah.
What happens if you did not necessarily have that item on a regular scheduled meeting? What if you schedule a different time frame?
We just have to schedule special meetings. We'd have to do all the public notice and all
Okay.
those, but we've done that with
We've done that.
occasional things that we've had to do with either an action or, remember us doing a bid award?
Yeah.
Right between Christmas and New Year's a few years ago because we had a really good bid that was about to expire. I think it was the bridge at Pearl Park.
Yeah.
That bridge contract was, the clock was ticking and we thought, that's a really good bid. Let's make sure we get it done. So we scheduled a special meeting. Yeah, that was one reading. So that was easier. But you got to back into how you do it and we got the notice requirements. So it does, it is pretty onerous from a process standpoint.
Having the item on an audit is not necessarily the best thing to happen either. Are we through with,
We do have, there were also 2 recommendations on the
Okay.
reporting, and Margaret will share her thoughts on that.
For the reporting, the first one is they want us to update one of the notes in the capital assets. So I know not everybody carries their annual report with them, but in the annual report on page 62, we have a capital assets note. Currently, what they're talking about is the subscription-based information technology arrangements. So basically leases of software is the short version of that, Sabitas. We show it currently within our machinery and equipment line item. All we're going to do is pull that into its own line item for how much we've spent, how much depreciation is, and that's what they're looking for, so they can clearly see it separately. The second item talked about transfers. We currently have a note in our notes section that summarizes all the transfers. We're just going to add a schedule, a detailed schedule back at the supplementary information so they can clearly see $2 million came from road impact and moved to capital projects, so they can just clearly see, instead of a summary of it all, they can see it clearly from this fund to this fund.
any questions? Monthly reports.
Before I get to monthly, you had asked how much we spent purchasing water. In 2020 fiscal year '24, we spent $4.4 million purchasing water from Harpeth Valley, and in 2025, we spent $4.7 million. They budgeted in both of those years, and last fiscal year, $5 million, just to answer your question for that.
What are we thinking we're going to budget in '26, so that we make sure we don't? I know it's different than the impact fee budget, but do we expect?
North of 5. So if I recall, it's between 5.15 and 5.3 million. We take a look at that every year. It is an estimate. It's actually much more, I won't say much more, given the conversation we just had. But it is certainly usage and weather dependent. So you always want to overshoot, certainly. But yeah, no, that is an amount that does increase every year, and we feel comfortable. But again, we also don't want to commit.
Yep, thank you.
All right, monthly reports. I would just highlight 2 things. Sales tax year-over-year increase is a 5.2%. And also, I just wanted to point out for State Street Aid, since we talked about that earlier, it is holding comparable to last year. So we're not losing money on State Street Aid, but we're not gaining it either, so.
Any questions or comments of Margaret? Mayor, any comments?
No comments.
Do you know what comes up next?
Next meeting discussion.
Yeah.
That's what comes
And I
up
looked
next.
to, I looked to
I'll
Angie
wait-
on this
I'll
too.
wait for it.
We discussed this last time. We just need to get what works best for all of you. Our next scheduled meeting is April 9th. That is one that we raised an option to look at the following week as a meeting time. If we do April 9th, I will need to attend it virtually. We talked through the technology, so Angie may be able to give us feedback there. And then I think the other 2 dates we had some consideration was, I think the 13th or 15th in the following week. And I know those may not, that would be a fully in-person meeting if that works, but I know there are some considerations there too. So we'll do what works best for the committee members, and Angie may be able to give us what the 9th looks like. That's important to me because that's what I'm hearing back from you about some of the things that you've given us feedback on the program enhancement list. And so having a little give and take with you does actually help me in making my recommendation that will come to you in early May. So if it was a normal meeting, I wouldn't even ask you. But given that, the nature of that give and take and that discussion, I'm thinking about how to best facilitate that. So Angie, what would the 9th
Angie,
look like?
I think I was the sticking point.
Yeah.
So before we go down this road,
Okay.
I can do the 13th.
Does that work for everybody?
I don't know if anybody,
That's the Monday, correct?
yes, it was Monday. And I don't know, did you say yes or no?
I don't know. I've got some things that.
What's that? It is a BOMA week that will give you back-to-back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're here.
13th would work for me if we needed to do the 15th, other than tax day and me probably being at 5 points, dropping off my taxes at 11:59. I'll be able to work that as well.
So
I think
13th would
13th,
be okay?
13th.
Okay, well then that keeps it simple and gives everybody a little more time to look at the PERs.
Which, speaking about that, you all will be receiving an email from me tomorrow with the PERs. So all PERs that you have seen will be summarized, just like we've done in years past. You will have two options. Either A, you can fill out the Excel spreadsheet and look at the PDF as a guide, or if you wish to prefer to print off the first part of it and scan it and drop it off at City Hall or scan it back to me, more than happy to take it either way. The deadline for getting that back will be March 31st. Although, given the fact we've just done it to the 13th, we can extend that to April 3rd, the end of that next week. That gives us a few days to then process and then turn it around to post agendas and things. And then you'll be able to see the summaries just like you have.
So you'd have it ready for us to look at?
You'll be receiving this via an email tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other items or comments to come before the committee? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Proper motion second, is there a second? Second. All indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any objections to us adjourning?